Good morning, America. Happy Monday. It's RSBN's live desk from Washington, D.C. President Trump meeting with the NATO Secretary General today in the Oval Office, also scheduled for a luncheon meeting with the White House Faith Office, which has been really very big in the last couple of weeks here with the Texas floods that took place last week. Also, the score of negotiations on the African continent for peace. Paula White running that office, being right there at the right-hand side of President Trump, as many African nations coming to the table for peace, namely the Democratic Congo of the Republic of Rwanda, and also the DCR. So you have that situation going on there, where it was the worst conflict since World War II, with 6 million people dying, perishing as a result of tribal warfare there on the African continent. 6 million, just extraordinary over the course of 30 years. President Trump, the Peace Through Strength candidate, the Peace Through Strength commander-in-chief, and truly the consoler-in-chief, as President Trump and First Lady set an unbreakable spirit. They see it in Texas, as the White House shared over the weekend. President Trump and First Lady Melania Trump, in case you missed it, Friday in Kerrville, Texas, to console those who lost their loved ones in those unspeakable, once-in-a-generation storms that took place. The flood rising out of the Guadalupe River over 30 feet in roughly half an hour. In the aftermath of last weekend's catastrophic floods that happened over the 4th of July weekend, the President and First Lady surveyed the damage and the devastation and met with community members and Texas officials, thanking them for their heroic, incredible first responders, and pledged the administration's ongoing support as the community recovers. Now, President Trump delivered remarks during a roundtable discussion on Friday afternoon with first responders and local, state, and federal officials. And to quote him, he said, "As a nation, we mourn for every single life that was swept away in the flood, and we pray for the families that were left behind." It's truly amazing, the incredible spirit from those families, and I don't even know how they do it. And you can see the president was visibly shaken in that moment of the really terrible storms that he's dealt with, whether they be hurricanes, tornadoes, federal responses from FEMA, also in conjunction with Department of Homeland Security and Kristi Noem's work to help those when there is devastation, as well as really emboldening the local officials to be those first responders, and they are the ones who know what's going on the ground first. And as Texas has responded so quickly, you can see how the president was really just moved by these stories. The people here, first responders, the sheriff's office, all of the police, law enforcement, they've done an unbelievable job. We were just making a little tour of the area, and it's hard to believe the devastation. Trees that were 100 years old just ripped out of the ground. I've never seen anything like this. We've just visited with the incredible families. They've been devastated. As the president continued, a lot of young angels at the girls' Christian summer camp known as Camp Mystic. They were there because they loved God, and we grieve this unthinkable tragedy. We take comfort in the knowledge that God has welcomed those little beautiful girls into his comforting arms in heaven. And President Trump continued, "My administration is doing everything in its power to help Texas. We've deployed over 400 first responders and assisted more than 1,500 rescuers. Customs and Border Protections and the U.S. Coast Guard have deployed numerous search and rescue crews." In 2 words, as the president put it, unity and competence. If you were to ask me, 2 words that I've seen here, the way everyone has just pulled together, it's rare that you see this. And we do have that video from the Texas flood recap of President Trump's visit, in case you missed it. Governor Greg Abbott stated, "We cannot thank you enough for deploying the Coast Guard, deploying the resources. When I made a request for a disaster declaration, you and your administration granted that. This is the fastest that I'm aware of any administration responding." So that was a direct quote from the governor to the president of the United States. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick of Texas, you and Madam First Lady, the two of you being here sends a message. It paints a picture that words cannot express, and it gives them hope. You and the federal government will help us get through everything, all the debris that has to be taken, all the rebuilding, and also I know we can count on you. So from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of all these families, thank you. The Texas Division of Emergency Management Chief W. Nim Kidd, your immediate declaration for individual assistance and public assistance will help us rebuild and recover. Thanks to you, Mr. President, 19 other states have sent resources to us. Secretary Noam, thank you for your coordination and the effort on that. Your team has been phenomenal. Thank you for really a great job that you've done, and the coordination has been incredible. And in response, Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem stated that what we are doing here, sir, is empowering the state and the local officials to make the best decisions for their people because they know their people, they know their community. Thank you for being a president who trusts people. Congressman Chip Roy adding that, I can't thank you enough, Mr. President. When I called you on Friday, you said whatever you need. I've never seen such a quick response and such a focus on delivering for the people. A Texas state trooper also added that I want to thank you too, sir, because if we did not have a secure border, we would not have this many assets to move. I wanted to say that to you personally. And also a local resident who remains unnamed just said this is devastating, it's horrible, but our president is here. He's supporting us, he's sending us whatever he can to support us. So there's been a far left legacy media narrative that for some reason, in one way or another, that this White House does not care about taking care of local tragedy. Nothing could be further from the truth. And that's this ripple effect you've seen with illegal immigration. It blocks law enforcement from getting other things done, like caring for citizens when a once-in-a-generation storm hits. And whatever that reason may be, Mother Nature or man-made practices that led to this moment, you need a strong response. You need that search and recovery effort to continue. And that is what is happening here as Governor Greg Abbott pledged. Everyone will be found and recovered and accounted for, living or dead, so that people can mourn the loss of their loved ones and most importantly, not forget their stories. 17 white crosses sit at the Bubbles Inn. It was where the smallest or youngest campers would stay. And everyone, as it's been reported in that specific cabin, sadly lost their lives. And Congressman Chip Roy, along with the other local officials, recounting that, watching parents sit at these crosses and kiss them, just a devastating thing to experience. So our thoughts and prayers, first and foremost, must be with those who lost family members. And these heroic stories that we keep hearing of over 850 people saved in this process thus far. Thank you to the Coast Guard and to the state and local Texas officials, even Governor Kay Ivey, along with 19 other states. She has sent the Alabama National Guard to assist with recovery and the search effort there in Kerrville, Texas, in the central hill country of Texas. Truly one of the most beautiful places, not only in America, but throughout the world. Reeling and hurting right now. 31 million Americans live in Texas, and they always come together. And we should come together to wrap our arms around the beautiful Lone Star State. Not alone in this effort by any means, as 19 states and counting assisting with this recovery effort. And as you take your time to enjoy summer celebrations of all kinds, make sure that the people of Texas are in your thoughts and prayers, and especially Camp Mystic. And may he rest in peace, Dick Eastland. We keep hearing more stories about the way he led that camp and inspired generations of young people to bring that Christianity into a personal relationship in their own hearts. And it sounded like an amazing, special place to attend. I was one to actually attend Young Life camps here and there growing up over the years, and all the way up in Minnesota, and I know that they have camps throughout this great nation of ours, but there's nothing quite like a time for a student, a young person, to really set aside their time away from family to go learn about our Lord and Savior and the mission that he had in 33 short years on this earth, and then to learn life skills as well, survival skills, and how to enjoy the outdoors and conservation. This all goes hand in hand together. It's the beauty that God has given us and has given to man to look over. And you expect them, as I mentioned last week, to go to camp, and I think your worry as a father or a mother, will they get along at camp? Will they enjoy camp? Will they be bullied? What life skills will they learn from this? Is it worth the investment? And of course, missing them just for that week or two, or maybe even a month away, and you just don't think anything like this will happen. We just don't know how much time we're allotted on this beautiful earth, and that's why every day is the present. So make the most of it, serve others, and do what God has willed you to do in this lifetime, because it's ultimately the gift you give back to him, because he's given us so much. And it's those special blessings that you have in your own life to really look at with an attitude of gratitude, as we are awaiting President Trump meeting with the NATO Secretary General today in the Oval Office. And this was the gentleman, the former Dutch Prime Minister, who said, it's like when Daddy's home during the NATO conference. And President Trump went there, and promises made, promises kept. Just a couple of weeks ago was able to secure 5% GDP being spent across member nations, with the exception of Spain. And President Trump pledged that Spain, in one way or another, will be delivering on that, making up of that 5%. Now, they have large social safety nets in the beautiful country of Spain, but what was mentioned was that they could, for some reason, not take care of their own security as part of this pact. And President Trump said whether it be trade or in some other way, they will make up for it. And we saw with the flurry via Truth Social of different letters to many nations over the course of the last several days regarding 25% tariffs to 40% tariffs, some in between that range and some slightly more, so that they will come to the table and renegotiate. President Trump is literally changing the global economy on the most grand scale thinkable. And in turn, it's bringing trillions and trillions of dollars into the United States on the heels of the passing of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which is now becoming law, or became law back on the 4th of July. So we'll see much needed relief. For the average family, you might be asking, what are the tax relief? What is going to be in my wallet specifically? Well, the average family of four will have $10,900 on average more left in their wallets as a result of this. You also have great grand tax relief. We have truly the final security apparatus for the border, as Tom Homan needed to fund all of this, because as that gentleman said, because of the auto pen, because of what he did over the course of 4 years, we need to get rid of 7,000 illegal aliens every single day in order to keep up with the millions that came over the border. So to give you some of those numbers for context, so you can visually put pen to paper. Also, some breaking news. President Trump will be visiting, along with First Lady Melania Trump, His Majesty the King Charles III in the UK on September 17th through the 19th. So Wednesday through a Friday. We'll stay on that trip in a couple of months from now, along with the Queen Consort of the United Kingdom. And we look forward to that very special visit, as President Trump in his first term did visit his late mother, Queen Elizabeth II, one of the longest reigning monarchs in British history. Also, there are reports that with the New York City mayoral race, something that has been in many news cycles, that Andrew Cuomo may launch an independent bid. We'll watch on that. That would then really relatively make it a four-way race between the Communist Democrat nominee, Curtis Sliwa, the Republican nominee, and then also now Democrat mayor turned independent, Eric Adams, who has been really, I think, having one of the most difficult jobs in all of America right now, really being a pro-police Democrat, but then really shoved and pushed out of his party. If you watch the testimony of mayors and governors from blue states, just how much of it was almost like someone was from Earth, the other people were from Mars. The testimony of Governor J.B. Pritzker and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, extraordinarily different and really a cover-up when you look at Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson of what they're doing to usurp the federal authority on immigration. Incredibly extraordinary, and people like Congressman Brandon Gill of Texas pointing it out. You know, asking J.B. Pritzker, do you support Hamas? Are you a supporter of the Palestinian movement because of what has been allowed and funded in your state? It's really extraordinary to watch all of that. And we are watching now as President Trump is currently meeting with the NATO Secretary General. We will bring that to you when we get any live feed or recorded, as well as President Trump does have a luncheon meeting with the White House Faith Office. And sadly, they really have not been in many news cycles, but they deserve a lot of credit with their leader, Pastor Paula White, who has been there to help negotiate peace on the African continent just last week as well, before President Trump's trip to Texas to look at the damage of the floods off the Guadalupe River in central Texas, sitting down with African leaders and several actually nominating him for the Nobel Peace Prize. And if they did not do that, said he did deserve the Nobel Peace Prize because of the work he's done in order to bring peace to the African continent. Sadly, many of these countries are new countries, but they've gone through tribal warfare for many, many years. And we have seen that too with the DCR in the Congo, also the Republic of Rwanda, finally coming to terms with peace after 30 years. 6 million people have perished because of that conflict, the most since World War II in modern history. So really something that, aren't you surprised legacy media will not touch that? They don't want to talk about that, especially, sadly, in areas of the world where the Christian population is still being discriminated against. There's genocide, whether it is the Armenians or you look at Syria right now, that's really in a mess due to their civil war and the fall of Bashir al-Assad. There were 22 martyrs in a Greek Orthodox church just going back to last month after President Trump ended that 12-day war between Israel and Iran. So it really, you could pay the price for simply going to church in some countries. So we must be united in praying for our friends and family members abroad, the brothers and sisters in Christ that are fearless in all of this, who are peacefully and patriotically trying to make their neck of the woods a better place to live and to simply just follow a God-given right, one we recognize here in America. I'm nearly 250 years young, that all of these inalienable rights come from God, not government. But around the world, there are different views on that, so we have to be mindful of it. As this president is on a daily basis working to dialogue with people, working to make sure domestically we have tranquility, and then abroad that the murdering, the killing stops. Because we saw 4 years ago under the auto pen how different that was. Vladimir Putin emboldened, invading a sovereign nation. And Vladimir Zelensky continues his puppet war in a stalemate that seemingly has no end. And as President Trump put it, look at you have no cards to play here. This is not going to end well unless you come to terms with peace. And this continues to happen. There'll be a situation now where NATO will be funding the Patriot missiles coming from the United States because Vladimir Putin has not been exactly honest even in his dealings with President Trump. But that being, as President Trump has said aboard Air Force One recently, one of the more complicated issues to handle and deal with on a regular basis, because you have two leaders that really, really, really hate each other. And it seems as if they're putting their personal feelings above the benefit of both nations. So we'll watch that very closely as many conflicts around the world coming to an end and things getting better, generally speaking, thanks to the leadership of President Trump meeting with our partners here at the White House. And this meeting was agreed to when that NATO summit was taking place over in the beautiful Netherlands, in the Dutch capital. So we saw some of that footage from a couple of weeks ago as President Trump had an extraordinary June, as we're approaching now 6 months of him being back in the White House, back as the 47th Commander-in-Chief. You saw at the G7 signing another trade agreement and pact with the United Kingdom and Prime Minister Starmer, leaving that early to help end the 12 days war between Israel and Iran with the B-2 strikes. The most successful strike in history, no surface-to-air missiles, no casualties on either side. Those B-2s were followed by Tomahawks that knocked out nuclear sites that were extraordinarily, seemingly operable, powerful, and centrifuges that continued to spin, although you had the naysayers of the Obama years, the Autopen years, that ransomed payments over to the Iranian government. And why did they do that? Was there any connection to the fall of Benghazi? Did it have anything to do with Syria? Did it have anything to do with Obama's upbringing in a madrasa? I think all very valid questions as we look into the reason why would you appease an extreme theocratic militant government and hand them over American taxpayer money. And go back to the last Republican administration before Donald Trump. You had Dick Cheney, the warmonger in chief, who needed billions and billions of dollars, and his company, Halliburton, to go in and find nothing. No weapons of mass destruction, obliterate and upend an entire government, then in turn maim and kill countless young Americans. It's interesting to think about, because President Trump only needed a couple of 20 or so odd or old bombers to come in undetected, a 36-hour mission that started from Whitman Air Force Base in Missouri and went all the way to Iran and back, being refueled on several occasions. One of those brave bombers was a female. So an extraordinary group of brave patriots who train for these missions, put countless hours in, and are ready to sacrifice themselves for the benefit of the nation. And they were in that airspace roughly, give or take, anywhere from 20 to 45 minutes, and the threat was ceased to exist as a result of President Trump's swift decisions on the recommendations of General Dan Raisin Kane. So extraordinary leadership that we've seen over the course of the last few weeks here. And it's the peace through strength policy that makes a lot more sense than the neocon, neoliberal, endless wars benefiting the military-industrial complex. The proof is in the pudding. And it's not so much, again, Republican versus Democrat, but rather that uniparty, deep state, League of Shadows, far-left globalist ideology that did not do service to the American military, the middle class, that bankrupted Detroit, but instead bankrolled Beijing, bringing them into the World Trade Organization. We know that Autopen, when he was a senator, he would like to clank and cheers those beautiful champagne glasses, that crystal, with then Vice Premier Xi Jinping, the communist dictator of China, saying that bringing in China to the World Trade Organization is a good thing. Well, that ended up not being a very good move for the United States, as they want an economic Pearl Harbor against our country. They want to buy up the primetime farmland. There was a huge press conference last week, in case you missed it, that we covered here, with USDA Chief Brooke Rollins, the great secretary, along with other cabinet officials, including our Attorney General, diving into these issues to make sure the Chinese Communist Party does not buy up our farmland around our military bases to spy on us. We saw the spy balloon under the auto pen and how long that took. It went across the country from Montana all the way down to South Carolina without it being shot down. Finally, it ceased to exist, but it took hours to get down. It should have been brought down immediately. But President Trump has a different philosophy in dealing with that. And right here in Alabama, as beautiful and wonderful as a state this is here in red country, 2.2 million acres of farmland in Chinese ownership. It has to stop. It has to stop right now. We had senators like Tommy Tuberville running for governor of Alabama. They're in attendance with Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders of Arkansas. And ideally, as staff put it, there are some blue governors participating too, but they don't really talk about it so much in the media. And they all should be participating, whether it be a Republican or Democrat governor, to protect the homeland against foreign threats such as the Chinese Communist Party. So I'm sure many of those topics on the docket today for President Trump as he's meeting with the NATO Secretary General in the Oval Office right now, as we near roughly the 11 o'clock mark on the East Coast and 8 o'clock on the West Coast. Good morning, America. I'm Robert McNeely. If you're just tuning in, welcome to RSBN's Live Desk. And welcome to July 14th, 2025, this beautiful Monday. As we reflect, just yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of the attempted assassination against President Trump. And in turn, Butler, Pennsylvania changed forever. That beautiful field turned red by an absolute lunatic. And there's so many questions that surround what happened just 1 year ago. And we do know that 6 from the Secret Service have been suspended because of the actions, or rather inactions, of what took place that day. President Trump has spoken very highly of the Secret Service, especially under Sean Curran, the new director, who was literally there on his 6 that day, responsible for, if there's any emergency, literally pulls the president up from the belt loop and carries him on his left-hand side, as you saw that in the iconic photo of fight, 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 with the blood trickling down from the side of his face onto his mouth, and said, wait, I need to get my shoes. True character was shown that day. People's approach to President Trump, I think, changed that day. And someone who was viewing it as well, just so nervous and so sad to see something like this happen in America. But as he put on True Social, 1 year ago today, this was the White House, July 13th, 2024, Butler, Pennsylvania. As President Trump said, I was saved by God to make America great again. And if you remember, too, this is days before the Republican National Convention. In fact, roughly 36 hours until the convention would begin. It would commence, it would change it slightly, but it became really an inspiration to countless millions of Americans. And one thing that really touched me in that moment was watching the people in that hospital as his ear was operated on. And he walked out of the Suburban, out of the motorcade, and people said, oh my God, thank you, God, President Trump is safe. He is safe. He is safe. And in a situation like that, I've never been in an active shooter scene in the moment, but I've been in situations as a reporter that there is danger and can be surrounding danger. And a lot of people run. The people in Butler, Pennsylvania stood there. And it shows the courage of this MAGA movement. They stood there, they listened to law enforcement, and it could have been, people could have been trampled as a result. That did not happen. But we do remember Corey Campitor, the extraordinary firefighter who gave his life in service on a daily basis to his community. And he did the same that day, shielding his wife and 2 young daughters from oncoming bullets. And they still want answers. We still want answers into the entirety of what exactly was behind this. We know that there was this one allegedly lone wolf, but many questions surround his background, the connections, the multiple cell phones. And we here at the network, we want free speech. We want to bring you transparency in real time. And there are stories that are ongoing and that will continue to unfold over the course of days and weeks, months, and perhaps years, but we'll be right here with you at Right Side Broadcasting Network to break that in real time and find the truth. And that's why we love tips. That's why we love to hear from you, the viewers. Feedback at rsbn.tv, always a wonderful go-to. If you'd like to opine with the good, the bad, the ugly, everything, we read that here at the network. We just don't say that right in and then just to waste your time. We want to bring you everything that matters to you, especially in your neck of the woods, inside and outside of the Beltway. And one way we do that is with great sponsors, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, 20% off right now. Pay less for prescription medications. Scan that QR code because there's a new COVID variant out. There's also storms in life. We saw what happened in Texas, how horrible that was. And when things like that happen, whether it's Mother Nature, whether it's man-made, whether there's an emergency in your own life, good to have your medicine cabinet stocked with ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, mebendazole, NAD+, over 200 essential medications with All Family Pharmacy, code RSBN20. Pay less for prescription medication. And there's also emergency medical kits, antibiotics, everything to protect you and yours. And here's the great part. You can actually take this on the road with you as you go to your summer destinations and enjoy the great American road trip, as Secretary Sean Duffy has encouraged this year. Hey, gas prices way lower than they've been in roughly 4 years, especially with the summertime spikes that tend to happen. Why not save some more money on your essential prescription medications as you enjoy traveling this great nation of ours? allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. 20% off now with code RSBN20. There's also Kalshi.com/RSBN. Great questions like, will Elon Musk create a new political party this year? 36% chance that he will not, but you can change that trajectory if you vote yes. Also, who will President Trump pardon this year? And then other questions surrounding a little baseball game, the Midsummer Classic tomorrow in Atlanta, Georgia. Who will win that, the American League or the National League? As we saw the Florida Panthers in hockey, they repeated the Stanley Cup. So all those questions with sports, culture, politics, and everything in between affecting you domestically and even internationally. Kalshi.com/RSBN, your go-to for all of the big questions. Trade on the best events, the most fun events, and place your bets today. Kalshi.com/RSBN. As we await President Trump to meet with the NATO Secretary General, the former Dutch Prime Minister as well. In the Oval Office today, he said he wanted to come visit after the NATO meetings that took place in the beautiful Netherlands just a couple of weeks ago, coming off of President Trump's extraordinarily successful June, and how grateful the NATO Secretary General was for President Trump's handling and ending of the Iranian threat really to the world, not only the Western world, but all of the world, because they didn't have the shared view of mutually assured destruction. The leadership of Iran really believes in complete theocratic domination. So if you do not convert to Shia Islam in their view, you are an infidel. You are someone who deserves to die. They've said it as such. They've called America the great Satan from the UN. They have called Israel a group of cockroaches and the Jewish people. Nothing could be further from the truth, and the anti-Semitism must end. And something we've seen here domestically, spiking roughly 900% over the course of the last 2 years. And it's thanks to the rhetoric of far-left demon rats that coddles this type of behavior on some of America's most elite campuses. But the hatred must end. Sadly, you can't always change hearts and minds, but persuasion does it best. And by standing up and speaking out, that's the only way to ensure that evil does not thrive. It's when good men, good people choose not to act, that's when that happens. And President Trump is someone who has not only engaged the culture, but the world community on a regular basis. And we see that each and every day, whether it's in the Beltway or abroad on these trips. So President Trump meeting with the NATO Secretary General. Right now, we'll bring you some live tape or recorded tape of that as soon as we get it in. And then also a noon luncheon with the White House Faith Office. Pastor Paula White doing some extraordinary work recently with bringing the African continent to peace with several nations and their leaders meeting with President Trump and at the White House just last week. Let's go to a quick commercial break and stick with us here on Right Side Broadcasting Network. Good morning, America. I'm Robert McNeely. It's always a joy to be with you on this Monday, July 14th. We'll be back in a couple of minutes.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed. So join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat Live Show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
To celebrate our newest launch, Rev 7, I'm bringing you an amazing introductory offer, plus an exclusive overstock sale that you're not going to want to miss. Rev 7 is our premium energy drink that tastes great and gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. That's because there's no sugar and no caffeine. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7 that for a limited time you can try our 3-pack absolutely free. Or check out our Percale bed sheets. I can't believe I'm even going to say this. Every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes, only $29.88, even the queens and kings. Inventory is extremely limited, so order now.
Welcome back to RSBN Live. President Trump to meet with the NATO Secretary General. We'll take you there when we get film of that in the Oval Office. In case you missed it, there was a presidential message on the anniversary of the tragedy in Butler, Pennsylvania, just 1 year ago yesterday. And I'm sure, as I remember where I was in Atlanta, Georgia on that day, that evening, I'm sure you do as well, with President Trump sharing on True Social there the new book about Butler from the new author there who has done some amazing work, Sabina Zeno, on all of that. You can actually purchase that book through the link there on Truth Social. An extraordinary account of what we know and what took place just 1 year ago, but the presidential message stating that 1 year ago today at 6:11 p.m., 8 minutes after taking the stage on the grounds of Butler Farms to address thousands of Americans gathered at a campaign rally, rifle fire broke out and an assassin's bullet came within a quarter inch of ending my life and silencing our movement to restore American greatness. Yet by the hand of Providence and the grace of Almighty God, my life was spared. As we commemorate 1 year since the harrowing events of July 13th, 2024, we reaffirm that the American spirit has and will always triumph over forces of evil and destruction. Those who carry scars from that July 13th day defended our republic during one of our nation's darkest hours, running to the injured and amid chaos and uncertainty to provide comfort and life-saving care. Doctors and first responders rushed to help the wounded and rally goers guided their fellow citizens to safety. And patriots raised their fists in the air in an outpouring of support and national pride. These men and women arrived at the rally grounds as ordinary Americans, but left as heroes. They represent the very best of our nation, and we are forever indebted for their kindness and compassion. However, one name stands above all, and that's Corey Campitor, a firefighter veteran and devoted husband and father. When gunfire erupted, Corey did not hesitate to protect and cover his family and died a hero for his inspiring love, valor, and faithfulness. President Trump ended the message stating that we pay tribute to their spirit, love, unity, and resilience, and we proclaim with one voice the epic battle, fight, fight, fight. We'll send it there now live to you, the White House with President Trump.
Okay, thank you very much. It's an honor to have a friend of mine who's become very friendly over the last number of years. We knew each other before, but Mark is the head of NATO, Mark Rutte, Secretary General of NATO. Highly respected by everybody that knows him, but in particular the European countries. They have great reliance on him. And he's done a fantastic job. And we had a tremendous meeting, I guess it's about a month ago. And I think Mark will tell you that it was really perhaps more important the date of November 5th. That was the election day. Maybe that was the most important because we made tremendous progress together. And one of the reasons that you're here today is to hear that we are very unhappy, I am, with Russia. But we'll discuss that maybe a different day. But we're very, very unhappy with them, and we're going to be doing very severe tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. Tariffs at about 100%. You'd call them secondary tariffs. You know what that means. But today we're going to talk about something else. And as you know, we've spent $350 billion approximately on this war with Russia and Ukraine. And would like to see it end. It wasn't my war, it was Biden's war. It's not my war. I'm trying to get you out of it. And we want to see it end. And I'm disappointed in President Putin because I thought we would have had a deal 2 months ago, but it doesn't seem to get there. So based on that, we're going to be doing secondary tariffs if we don't have a deal in 50 days. It's very simple. And they'll be at 100%. And that's the way it is. It can be more simple. It's just the way it is. I hope we don't have to do it. But regardless, we are going to be we make the greatest military equipment in the world, whether it's missiles. You saw that recently in Iran, the way those planes, every single 14 bombs hit every target. Then you had the helicopters shoot a total of 30 bombs, 30 missiles, and they hit every single, Marco, is that right? Every single piece, every single target. And it was, I guess, on a scale of 0 to 10, they say it was about a 15. That's how successful it was. That's how lethal it was, a word they like to use nowadays. But it was well-organized attack that people in this country wanted to do for 24 years. You know, when we had the pilots in last week, they were saying, "Sir, we've been practicing this for 24 years," meaning people, not them, but other people that are a little older now. But they too, and you were the one that let us do it. But we've been practicing it 3 to 4 times a year for 22, 24 years, because they always knew they had to stop Iran from doing what they were doing, which is trying to come up with a nuclear weapon, a nuclear bomb. And we did it very successfully. And we make the best equipment, the best missiles, the best of everything. The European nations know that. And we've made a deal today, and I'm going to have Mark speak about it, but we've made a deal today where we are going to be sending them weapons and they're going to be paying for them. The United States will not be having any payment made. We're not buying it, but we will manufacture it and they're going to be paying for it. Our last meeting of a month ago was very successful in that they agreed to 5%, which is more than $1 trillion a year, so they have a lot of money. And these are wealthy nations. They have a lot of money, and they want to do it. They feel very strongly about it, and we feel strongly about it, too. But we're in for a lot of money, and we don't want to do it anymore, and we can't. But we make the best, and we're going to be sending the best to NATO, and in some cases to maybe, at Mark's suggestion, if we go to Germany, where they're going to send early on missiles, and they'll be replaced, and NATO is going to take care of it. It's going to be coordinated by NATO, and they're going to work very much with Matt Whitaker, who's right here, who's a great ambassador, and Matt's going to be coordinated. You better do a good job, Matt.
I will.
But Matt's going to coordinate. He's a very talented guy. So in a nutshell, we're going to make top-of-the-line weapons, and they'll be sent to NATO. NATO may choose to have certain of them sent to other countries where we can get a little additional speed, where the country will release something and it'll be mostly in the form of a replacement. And I'd like to have Mark, and again, just a highly respected, pretty young guy, for having had the career that he's had, because he had an amazing career before going to NATO. So, and we spent a lot of time together over the last couple of months. And if you could say a few words.
Absolutely. No, Mr. President, dear Donald, this is really big. This is really big. You called me on Thursday that you had taken a decision. And the decision is that you want Ukraine what it needs to have to maintain, to be able to defend itself against Russia, but you do want the Europeans to pay for it, which is totally logical. And this is building on the tremendous success of the NATO summit. The 5%, but also the decision to keep Ukraine strong, and the decision to increase our defense industrial production. So based on that, that was Europe stepping up. This is again Europeans stepping up. So I've been in contact with many countries. I can tell you that at this moment, Germany massively, but also Finland and Denmark and Sweden and Norway, the United Kingdom, the Netherlands, all want to be part of this. And this is only the first wave. There will be more. So what we will do is work through the NATO systems to make sure that we know what Ukrainians need, so that we can make packages. Hexat at the Pentagon in a way that, of course, the US will put on its stockpiles necessary to defend this country. That's absolutely clear. But it will mean that Ukraine can get its hands on really massive numbers of military equipment, both for air defense, but also missiles, ammunition, etc., etc. So if I was Vladimir Putin today and hear you speaking about what you were planning to do in 50 days, and this announcement, I would reconsider whether I should not take negotiations about Ukraine more seriously than I was doing at the moment, if I was Vladimir Putin. But when I'm Ukraine, I think this is really great news for that. So I really want to thank you for that. And it means Europeans paying for it. And again, I mentioned all these countries, we will deal with that. And exactly as you said, that might also mean that countries will move equipment fast into Ukraine, and then the US later backfilling it, because speed is of the essence here. So really, thank you. This is important.
You did a great job. That's a really great job. We've been very successful in settling wars. You have India, Pakistan. You have Rwanda and the Congo. That was going on for 30 years. India, by the way, and Pakistan would have been a nuclear war within another week, the way that was going. That was going very badly. And we did that through trade. I said, we're not going to talk to you about trade unless you get this thing settled, and they did. And they were both great leaders, and they were great. But Rwanda and the Congo, that was going on for 30 years, and at least 7 million people killed, and killed with a lot of pretty rough weapons like machetes, heads chopped off. Couldn't even get near the countries. Nobody wanted to get near. It's so frightening. And we got that one solved. Serbia, Kosovo, got that solved. That was going to be one that was going to happen. And again, that was something I used. I use trade for a lot of things, but it's great for settling wars. That was really very important. We're working, Marco is working very hard with everybody here on the Strip, the Gaza Strip. I call it the Gaza Strip, one of the worst real estate deals ever made. They gave up the oceanfront property, one of the worst deals ever made. But It was supposed to bring peace, and it didn't bring peace. It brought the opposite. But we're doing pretty well on Gaza. Steve Witkoff is here, and I think we could have something fairly soon to talk about. And we solved other one that we just seem to have, Armenia and Azerbaijan. It looks like that's going to come to a conclusion, successful conclusion. We worked on Egypt with their next door neighbor who is a good neighbor. They're friends of mine, but they happened to build a dam which closed up water going into a thing called the Nile. I think if I'm Egypt, I want to have water in the Nile, and we're working on that one. It's a problem, but it's going to get solved. They built one of the biggest dams in the world, a little bit outside of Egypt. You know about that? You've been hearing about that one. And that turned out to be a big problem. I don't know. I think the United States funded the dam. I don't know why they didn't solve the problem before they built the dam. But it's nice when the Nile River has water. It's a very important source of income and life. It's the life of Egypt. And to take that away is pretty incredible. But we think we're going to have that solved very quickly. So we do good. The only one we haven't been able to get to yet is Russia. I'm not happy, and I will tell you that Ukraine wants to do something. Again, it's a war that should have never started. If I were president, it never would have happened. I used to speak to President Putin about it a lot. It was the apple of his eye. But once I saw what was going on, I said, they're gonna have a war here. I was outside. The election was rigged. And I was outside looking in, and I said, that thing's going to be a war. Couldn't believe it, because what Biden said was the exact opposite. And it started, and it's a real mess. We're losing, I guess they're losing 5,000 or 6,000 people a day. It's actually now more. I was saying 5,000 a day. It's actually more now. Mostly soldiers, but a lot of people in cities and towns that are getting blown up too. It's a horrible war, and it should be stopped. And so if it's not done, if we don't have an agreement in 50 days, that's what we're doing. Secondary tariffs, and they're biting. And I hope we don't get to the point where we do, but I've been hearing so much talk. It's all talk. It's all talk, and then missiles go into Kiev and kill 60 people. It's got to stop. But the purpose of this is to say that this is a very big deal we've made. This is billions of dollars worth of military equipment is going to be purchased from the United States, going to NATO, etc. And that's going to be quickly distributed to the battlefield. Ukraine will take it up. And, say what you want about Ukraine. When the war started, they had no chance. And they still would have had no chance if the equipment, they had the best equipment. Because we do make the best planes and missiles, and we make the best military equipment in the world by far. We have new things coming out that are beyond belief. And I'm very excited about the Golden Dome. It's going to give us very strong protection. We've already started that. But they had courage, because somebody has to use that equipment. And they fought with tremendous courage, and they continue to fight with tremendous courage. But they don't have, they're losing on equipment, and Russia's really taken a very positive, very strong, what they've done the last couple of weeks.
Without military reasons. So what they are doing is 700 drones a day, missiles, bombing cities. This is not because of military goals. It is just creating panic, keeping people out of their sleeps, hitting towns. It's really terrible, and it is meaning a lot of people lose their lives, but also the infrastructure, whole cities being
they're wiping out the electric. It's going to take years to rebuild it. That's going to be the next problem. Because, but that's going to take a long time. Many of the cities are knocked down to the ground. Many of the people have left, but many have stayed. I don't know. They actually stay. Most have stayed. Actually, it's incredible that they stay, and knowing that a missile could be hitting your apartment house, and your apartment house that you're sitting in could collapse on top of you. And they do very heavy construction. They don't use rebar. They do very thick concrete construction. Those are heavy buildings, big buildings. And heavy buildings, and they collapse like they're made out of paper. It's unbelievable to see this happening with so many people being killed. So we think we're making progress, and we hope we're going to make progress. In the meantime, we're going to get you good service on what you need. And we really became friendly with NATO this last meeting. You know, we went from 2% to 5%, which everyone said was not even a possibility. They weren't paying 2%. Many of them were paying much less than 2%.
But even those, since you became president, all committed to the 2% before the summit. And now collectively we committed to the 5%.
That's right, they did. And they've been very good. And I think I made a lot of friends over there. We had a couple of days of very intensive talks. And they're great people. They're leaders of countries. Leaders of countries. Many of them great countries, some of them smaller countries, but for the most part, very solid, strong countries, and very successful. Some of them are among the most successful countries in the world. So that's the story. We hope that's going to have an impact on Vladimir Putin, and we hope it's going to have an impact on Ukraine also. We want to make sure that Ukraine does what they have to do. All of a sudden they may feel emboldened, or maybe they don't want. You know, this is a very difficult situation.
Ukraine wants a peace deal.
I think so.
And they will stay committed to that, there's no doubt. They want this. But the Russians have to become
They have to continue to want it, though.
Yeah, I agree. But you and I will make sure of that.
All of a sudden they get no.
You and I will make sure of that.
We'll make sure. I feel confident that they will do what has to be done. Plus, we have certain parameters that both sides know, and we already know. So I think that's going to be it's going to be very strong. We want everlasting peace. Any questions, France? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. What was the tipping point for you in the conversation with President Putin? Was it a piece of intelligence? And why are you giving 50 more days?
I think I think it's a very short period of time. I think they'll forget. I've just really been involved in this for not very long, and it wasn't initial focus. This is a Biden war. This is a Democrat war, not a Republican or Trump war. This is a war that would have never happened. It shouldn't have happened. A lot of people being killed. When the final numbers come in, you're going to see a lot more people are being killed in this war than you think, than you've been writing about. It's a very deadly war. They're all bad, but this is a very deadly war. The numbers are going to be far greater. When an apartment house comes down, and they say 2 people were slightly injured. No, many people were killed. And those numbers will be at some point accurately reported. So far, they're not. It's a deadly war. I think that you're just going to see. I think you're going to see strong movement. I hope so. I hope so.
And what about
the secondary tariffs are very, very powerful.
What about the tariffs that the Republicans in the House and the Senate have ready? Those were 500%. Sure. Why are you doing 100%?
Well, the Republicans are moving very strongly in the Senate, giving us total control of it. But I'm not sure we need it, but it's certainly good that they're doing it. And Lindsey Graham's working hard. The whole John Thune, all of them, they're all working hard. And they're in coordination with Mike Johnson, Speaker in the House. And I think they've actually crafted a pretty good piece of legislation. It's probably going to pass very easily. And that includes Democrats. And there's some little tweaks. But I don't want them to waste their time. It could be very useful. We'll have to see. But we can do secondary. We're probably talking about 100% or something like that.
So can you clarify
we can do secondary tariffs without the Senate, without the House. But what they're crafting also could be very good.
So are you suggesting then that the Congress should move forward with those sanctions, the 500%, and that your 100 would be a separate additional package?
Yeah, I mean, the 500 is, sort of meaningless after a while, because at a certain point it doesn't matter. It's not going to be, it's 100. 100 is going to serve the same function. But, I have it at 100%. They may have it, I don't know what they're going to end up with. They may have it at 100 too. They may have it at 500. But they're doing some good work in the House, and I think in the House and the Senate. And as you know, they're coordinated, and they can have it done quickly. They said they'll have it as quickly as I need it. So we'll see. We're talking to him. In fact, John Thune's coming over later on to talk.
Did you call for it yet?
Yeah, he's gonna come over.
Thank you, Mr. President. Is it your view that Vladimir Putin mischaracterized his dedication to? Is it your view that Vladimir Putin did not clarify his intention to a peace deal? Well, and what happens now in the next phase? Is there?
We're going to see. I mean, we're going to go for a period of time. Maybe he'll start negotiating. I think I felt I don't know about you, Mark, but I felt that we had a deal about 4 times. Mm-hmm. And here we are, still talking about it.
And he didn't send serious people to the negotiations. So I remember that you were able, with Marco Rubio and with Steve Witkoff, to get these talks going in Istanbul.
Yep.
I remember I was myself in Turkey for NATO business in May, and we really put pressure on the Ukrainians to send a senior team into Istanbul, and they did. But then the Russians came up with this historian explaining history of Russia since 1250.
We thought, and I thought, we should have had a deal done a long time ago. But it just keeps going on and on and on. And every night people are dying. A lot of Russian soldiers are dying, by the way. And a lot of Ukrainian soldiers too. But a lot of Russian soldiers are dying.
100,000 Russian soldiers since 1st of January. Since January. 100,000 Russian soldiers dead since January. So if anybody in Moscow is listening to this, again, 100,000 dead Russians since January. This is what President Putin is doing at the moment.
Yeah, please.
Will these be Patriot missiles specifically, or Patriot batteries that you're planning? And when do you
everything? It's Patriots. It's all of them. It's a full complement with the batteries.
And when do you expect them to arrive in Ukraine, sir?
Well, we're going to have some come very soon, within days, actually. Because a couple of the countries that have Patriots are going to swap over, and will replace the Patriots with the ones they have, and Matt will coordinate with NATO. But so it's going to be, they're going to start arriving very soon.
And this afternoon, Boris Pistorius, the German defense minister, is visiting Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, and we'll discuss also, I think, on this whole Patriot thing. Norway is involved, so that's on the Patriots, but this whole deal is also about missiles or ammunition, so it's broader than Patriots.
We have one country that has 17 Patriots getting ready to be shipped. They're not going to need them for them. So we're going to work a deal where the 17 will go, or a big portion of the 17 will go to the war side.
Mr. President.
That can be done very quickly.
Mr. President.
Mr. President.
Yeah, please.
Could this transaction with NATO be viewed as a step towards achieving peace, letting Putin know that now Zelensky has a little bit more powerful tools in his tool chest, and maybe that brings him to the table to achieve peace? I know that you wanted to do that.
Brian, that's what we've been saying. I think you might have expressed it better if you wanted to.
That's
exactly what
it was. A summary.
That was a nice summary. I think he's done better than us. He's a very good guy, I can tell you that. But no, it's well said. Yeah, I think this is a chance at getting peace. Or it's just going to be the same thing. I have to tell you, Europe has a lot of spirit for this war. A lot of people, when I first got involved, I really didn't think they did, but they do. And I saw that a month ago, and you were there, many of you were there. The level of esprit de corps, spirit that they have is amazing. They really think it's a very, very important thing to do, or they wouldn't be doing it. Look, they're agreeing to, they're paying for everything. We're not paying anymore. We have an ocean separating us. I said, we have a problem. We make the best stuff, but we can't keep doing this. And Biden should have done this years ago. He should have done it from the beginning. A horrible job they did for this country. And I just hope between the border and this and so many other, inflation, what a horrible administration. The worst administration in history, in my opinion. It's not my opinion. I think it's everybody's opinion. But this is something that shouldn't have happened, and we're going to see if we can end it.
If I can follow up.
I do want to make one statement. Again, I said it before. This is not Trump's war. We're here to try and get it finished and settled and whatever. Because nobody wins with this. This is a loser from every standpoint.
From day
this
one.
was Biden, and this was other people. And it's very sad. It's a very sad situation. This gentleman's doing a great job. I think he's going to get it, and Matt and everybody else that's working on it. I think he'll get this thing over with. Hopefully.
Mr. President, you've praised European countries today as standing up for Ukraine, as being strong. Will you allow them to continue to negotiate tariffs lower than 30% before August 1st, or is the deal set at this point?
What does that mean? You mean you're talking about the tariffs?
On trade, on tariffs.
You're back on tariffs. They're on a more friendly tariff, right? A little bit more friendly tariff.
Perhaps.
No, we're going to be to people. We have, I watched the show this morning. They were talking about, well, when's he going to make the deal? The deals are already made. The letters are the deals. The deals are made. There are no deals to make. They would like to do a different kind of a deal, and we're always open to talk. We are open to talk, including to Europe. In fact, they're coming over. They'd like to talk.
Mr. President, is there any concern about the U.S. stockpiles? There was a pause in delivery of weaponry to Ukraine in order to evaluate, apparently, the U.S. stockpiles. What came out of that?
Evaluation. I mean, this was a very big, what we're talking about today is a very, very big day. And what Pete was doing, and me too, I knew what Pete was doing, was evaluation, because we knew this was going to happen. And now we actually announced it. They voted on it. It's all been done. So obviously that has a big impact on, when you say pause, obviously you're not going to be doing things if you don't know what's going to happen here. But we were pretty sure this was going to happen, so we did a little bit of a pause. But this is a very big event today. This is something very big.
If Putin escalates further, how far are you willing to go in response?
In what?
How far are you willing to go if Putin were to escalate, send more bombs in the coming days?
Don't ask me a question like that. How far? I want to get the war settled. They're not Americans that are dying in it, and I have a problem, and JD has a problem. It's a sad. They're not Americans dying, but there are a lot of people dying, and on something that should be able to be settled. And we all agree with that. This group of people, we want to defend our country, but ultimately, having a strong Europe is a very good thing. It's a very good thing. So I'm okay with that. Yeah, please, in the back.
Yeah, is there a ceiling on what the Europeans are willing to pay for? And it sounds like, are you ruling out the U.S. paying for from additional weapons through drawdown authority?
Because basically what the president is saying, that he is willing, of course, taking consideration what the U.S. needs itself. So it's not that you can have a shopping list and you can order whatever you want, because the U.S. has to make sure that the U.S. keeps its hand on what the U.S. needs also to keep the whole world safe, because in the end you are the police agent of the whole world. You're the most powerful nation on earth, the most powerful military on earth. But given that, the U.S. has decided to indeed massively supply Ukraine with what is necessary through NATO. Europeans 100% paying for that. And what we have been doing over the last couple of days is talking with countries, and I just mentioned the ones who in the first wave immediately said, we want to chip in. And then you're really talking about big numbers. Take Germany visiting today. They're really talking about big numbers.
Can we get some clarity?
I will say that I spoke with Germany, spoke with most of the larger countries, and they are really enthusiastic about this. They want to, and they're willing to go very far. I will tell you, as per your question, how far would I go? They want to go very far. They don't want this to happen. That's why I think from Putin's standpoint, it would really be good. He gets the country's economy is doing very poorly, and he's got to get his economy back. He's got to save his economy. He could save his country in a sense, but the economy can destroyed a lot of countries over the years. He wants to get that economy back. And, he's got a great country for trading and other things. If they could use the assets instead of war, he's got some tremendous potential. That's what I would say.
How did you deliver this news to Putin, sir?
Say it?
How did you tell Putin this was coming?
I speak to him a lot about getting this thing done. And I always hang up and say, well, that was a nice phone call. And then missiles are launched into Kiev or some other city. And I said, it's strange. And after that happens 3 or 4 times, you say, the talk doesn't mean anything. My conversations with him are always very pleasant. I say, isn't that a very lovely conversation? And then the missiles go off that night. I go home, I tell the First Lady, I spoke to Vladimir today. We had a wonderful conversation. She said, oh, really? Another city was just hit. So it's like, look, he's, I don't want to say he's an assassin, but he's a tough guy. It's been proven over the years. He's fooled a lot of people. He fooled Bush. He fooled a lot of people. He fooled Clinton, Bush, Obama, Biden. He didn't fool me. But what I do say is that at a certain point, talk doesn't talk. It's got to be action. It's got to be results. And I hope he does it. It's potentially such a great country to be wasting so many people on this and the money. And look at what's happened to his economy. Look at what's happened.
The threat in 50 days.
Yeah.
The economy will be hit very hard.
The First Lady's
I mean, look, I hope he's going to do it. He knows the deal. He knows what a fair deal is. If there is such a thing as a fair deal, there's no winners here. This is a loser. This is a loser. And I dealt with him from the beginning. And it wouldn't have happened, but I will say Ukraine was the apple of his eye. We talk about it. It was the apple of his eye, but it wasn't going to happen. And he understood that. It wasn't going to happen. And then I noticed, after I was out, I noticed soldiers forming at the border.
Yeah.
And then I heard horrible the other side. And I said, they're really handling it very, very wrong. It's a shame. Yeah.
Can I say one thing, and that is about President Trump, because you came in office in January. On the 12th of February, you had your first phone call with Putin. I think you did exactly what I hoped you would do. That is breaking the deadlock. Starting the conversation, because you have to test him. I know Putin very well from the days when I was Prime Minister. In the Netherlands, you have to test him. And you did this. And you really gave him a chance to be serious, to get to the table, to start negotiations. Steve Witkoff, Marco Rubio, we all tried to help you. But you've now come to a point where you say, well, hey...
We actually thought we had probably 4 times the deal.
Yeah.
I mean, you were called and we said,
Yeah.
this looks good.
Yeah.
And then the deal wouldn't happen because bombs would be thrown out that night and you'd say, we're not making any deals. It was like...
But you breaking the deadlock was crucial because you had to start that process. And you were the only one who was able to do that.
I think we'll get it done.
Do you think he's reasonable enough to negotiate an end to
I think
this?
we're going to get it done. I think, look, this is a very powerful situation. You have very wealthy countries buying the best equipment in the world. And we have the best equipment in the world. We make equipment like no other. You know, our submarines, nuclear submarines, are so powerful. They're the most powerful weapon ever built. And we have the best in the world they're 20 years behind, 25 years behind us. We have the greatest equipment anywhere in the world. I just hope we don't have to use it. Yeah, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. On a separate topic here, President Biden, of all people, spoke to the New York Times over the weekend. He did not speak to them on the record during his time in office at all, but he spoke to them recently. And he defended his use of the auto pen and said that he signed off on every decision. But at the same time, the Times reports that he did not individually approve each name for the categorical pardons that applied to large numbers of people. What are your take on that? Any new revelations from that?
Well, I mean, you're talking about the auto pen. Look, the auto pen, I think, is maybe one of the biggest scandals that we've had in 50 to 100 years. This is a tremendous scandal. And I know the people on the other side of the, see that desk, that Resolute desk? Unfortunately, he used it before me. But, you know, we have our choice of 7 desks. They're all beautiful. But I chose the Resolute, and so did he, unfortunately. But the people on the other side of the Resolute desk, I know them. Lisa, the whole group, and they're no good. They're sick people. And I guarantee you he knew nothing about what he was signing. I guarantee it. So they're going to figure it out, and we'll see what happens. But to me, the auto pen, you know, you elected president. You know what the auto pen is supposed to do? Sign thousands of letters from young people that write. We get thousands of letters a week, Susie, right? Thousands. I mean, tens of thousands sometimes. I look at a room, there's a room where we have many, many people working, responding and sending letters back. That's what an auto pen's supposed to be. To write to a young 7-year-old boy that writes to the president and he wants to be president someday and he loves America. That's what the auto pen's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be for signing major legislation and all the things. No, the auto pen, and I doubt he knew. I doubt they even spoke to him about it. I think they had, it's called the freewheeling auto pen. Like, Biden was never for open borders. Biden was never for transgender for everyone. So I don't think I think the radical left people that took over the White House, and if I didn't win, our country was finished. You know, when I was in, and I said this a couple of times, I hope I don't bore you with it, but when I was in Saudi Arabia, I was in Qatar, I was in UAE, and then I met with all of your leaders,
yes, sir,
including you, a great leader. he's now the leader of many countries, not just
No.
But I met with a lot of leaders over the last 2 months in the Middle East and all of the NATO countries. And I will tell you, they had one common phrase. They thought America was dead 1 year ago. And today they say, and they all say it, and I hope you'll back me up on this, but they say now it's the hottest country anywhere in the world. It is. Look at our numbers. Look at the numbers we made. You see, we made $25 billion last month. We didn't make that for years. Kicking in, the economy is very strong, even though we have a Fed person who's terrible. He doesn't know what the hell he's doing, but that's all right. We blow through interest rates. We're doing so well, we blow through it. Be nice because people would be able to buy housing a lot easier. But think of it. We thought your country was dead, and they were dealing with China because they were really going to China, but not anymore. But we thought your country was dead, and now you have the hottest country anywhere in the world. So we've done a really good job, and it's an honor to have this man. This man is a star, and he's going to be dealing with another one of my stars, Matt, and you're going to do a great job, Matt Whitaker. Okay? Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much.
And President Trump meeting with NATO Secretary Mark Rutte of the Dutch nation, the Netherlands, where he was prime minister. And very clear here that President Trump simply wants to end the war between Russia and Ukraine. This really is not a huge policy difference, with the exception of the fact that Patriot missiles produced and made by the United States will be heading in the defense of the Ukraine. But as the NATO Secretary General put it, it's the Europeans paying for this, and rightfully so. As he pointed out there, that was President Trump's request if that were to happen. And President Trump, again, taking a master class, presenting that to the American media regarding a situation where his past living predecessors, the former presidents, really were hoodwinked a time or two by Vladimir Putin, a former KGB agent in his own right, someone who is a master of disguise and someone who is a tough negotiator. But President Trump says, I always have good phone calls with him. I have regular phone calls with him. And we remember the entire Russia hoax, the Crossfire Hurricane, and everything that took place in that Oval Office between then Barack Hussein Obama, the 44th President of the United States, and his Autopen Vice President, with then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and her campaign that spied on President Trump's campaign. So we know the deep, insidious history of this, but President Trump making it clear that when he's on the phone with Vladimir Putin, the leader of Russia, everything sounds good. It sounds like things are going to end with the war, and then all of a sudden missiles go off and civilian casualties, and also, sadly, casualties for the Ukrainian military. So we see a situation here where it really is a stalemate, and Russia has hit many of its objectives with specific cities and specific ports that they want control of in this 3+ year war going on. And really that it was the mistake of the last administration, that the invasion of Ukraine would not have happened if President Trump was still in office. And I think that's an undeniable fact given what's taken place here. Stay tuned with us as we're looking forward to a White House Faith Office luncheon, the president hosting that today at the White House, in addition to his meetings with the NATO secretary. So stick with us here on Right Side Broadcasting Network Live as we thank our sponsors, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN, a new 10% off code, RSBN10, just breaking today for you. Scan that QR code now for NAD+, methylene blue, ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, mebendazole, and much, much more. So if you look at these life-saving medications that in some cases insurance does not want you to have, This is the online pharmacy that is saving you and yours for a rainy day. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Truly your go-to. 10% off now with code RSBN10. They have over 200 essential medications, also antibiotics. And these medications also easy to take on the road in addition to stocking up your medicine cabinet. So feel free to visit today, scan that QR code now, allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Thank you for your sponsorship on the right side of history. Angelpaste.com. Also a wonderful company out of Spring, Texas, the Lone Star State in the Houston Metroplex. It's off the Gulf of America, so they have great products like a natural mosquito repellent, something so important this time of year. Also, the vitamin B infused non-GMO, no chemical original Miracle Cream. There's also an orange option that has vitamin C immunity boosters. Again, non-GMO, no chemicals, and a natural facial spray for guys and gals as you paint the town red. So experience the miracle today. Angelpaste.com. Christian owned. They hire veterans and also are in that great state of Spring, Texas. But why not try them out today? You've seen me try it here on the network. It took care of my dry skin, left it glowing. Angelpaste.com and mypillow.com/RSBN. The new free shipping sale. There's always a great deal with the master marketer, Mike Lindell, as President Trump put it in Warren Township a couple of months ago to celebrate 100 plus days in the White House. My Cross, save 50% off now, the replica cross that Mike Lindell wears. How about those MyPillow bed sheets going for $24.98? What a deal there. But the ultimate multi-use MyPillow 2.0, whatever cover you'd like. The land we love with Lady Liberty and the American flag, or with God, all things are possible, or a simple gray, white, pink, red, white, and blue option, whatever you would like. Right there for you, $9.98. I mean, there's not even lunch deals that are $9.98 out there. So call today. Do not delay. 800-836-7566. Support Mr. Mike Lindell and Right Side Broadcasting Network with mypillow.com/RSBN. Save with code RSBN. It's a great go-to. The free shipping sale. Thank you to Mike Lindell, the purveyor of free speech, the defender of election integrity, and maybe, let's see, maybe the next governor of Minnesota. How exciting would that be? But with over 2,000 products at MyPillow, it's a great deal for you today. mypillow.com/RSBN. Thank you for supporting us on the right side of history as we're getting close to the noon o'clock hour on the East Coast. President Trump to have a faith office luncheon. They really have been someone that it's been a big media news cycle, a lot of changing aspects in the world, domestically and internationally. But this group really deserves so much credit. Pastor Paula White, the amazing work she's doing with Steve Witkoff, who is the Middle East envoy, but also the continent of Africa. More often than not, Christian communities are not discussed. Those that are going through genocide, those that are literally in danger of simply sharing their faith. This could be on the African continent with Rwanda, also the Democratic Republic of the Congo. They have now made peace. This has been the biggest conflict, 6 million people dying because of tribal warfare since World War II. It's a 30-year span, and the most people that have perished in any conflict in the world since the Second World War. Just think about that for a moment. Over the course of 30 years, it's almost my entire lifetime. When you think about that, all these people dying because of tribal warfare, those countries coming together under the leadership of Paula White, Steve Witkoff, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, and ultimately President Donald Trump. And several African leaders with him at a roundtable yesterday, and those nominating him for the Nobel Peace Prize. This is after Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, Bibi Netanyahu, meeting President Trump last week, and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth at the Pentagon last Monday, also writing their praise and thanks and official nomination for President Trump to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. And some congressmen here, including Buddy Carter, running for the United States Senate in the Peach State of Georgia, has nominated President Trump for the Nobel Peace Prize. So we'll see what happens in Oslo, Norway, but he does deserve that. He has been the Peace Through Strength Commander-in-Chief, and as Mark Rutte put it from the UN or the NATO Secretary of General and former Dutch Prime Minister for 14 years, said that it is the promises made, it's the promises kept, it's strong, decisive leadership coming from this president that helps Europe and in turn can make Europe a stronger continent as well and a more fair continent, not only with the tariff deals towards the United States, but the 5% GDP across the board that has been agreed to with the exception of Spain. And we know that President Trump said that at the NATO summit that Spain will pay one way or the other when it comes to making up that 5% GDP mark that every other nation agreed to for the Security Pact. And Mark Rutte, really doing a wonderful job as NATO Secretary General, mentioning that this president is unafraid to use force when necessary, but wants to be the peacemaker. And this was coming off the heels of the ending of the 12 days war between Israel and Iran. So this is the guy who's cleaning up an absolute mess left by the auto pen, and one of the reasons why God preserved him 1 year ago in that Butler field. Could you imagine for a moment, 1 year later, and whether you have criticisms on specific issues, whatever it might be at hand, because there is so much going on in the world right now and here at home, think about if this world did not have Donald Trump right now. It would be a much more dangerous place. It would be a much more reckless place. And I would bet to say a far scarier place with any other Republican or Democrat leader at the moment and without President Donald Trump to clean up a mess of millions pouring over this border, the fentanyl crisis, what's happening with human trafficking. On Friday, President Trump announcing as well, before going to Texas with our lovely First Lady Melania Trump, 10,000 of those children found of the 300,000 that were lost or purposefully trafficked via the auto pen administration. And we know this because Secretary Robert F. Kennedy said as such weeks ago, that HHS was connected to the loss of all these children that came over the border. I mean, that's just such a disturbing thought to think about, people under the age of 10 being lost to human trafficking, and even worse, intentionally. It's a scary thought, but this administration working overtime to make sure people are safe in this country and abroad. And there's one person to really clean up the mess. And it's through these tariff negotiations as well that seem to be working very, very well. President Trump changing global policy on the economy and stating that we were actually making much more money when you compare it to the GDP dating back to the 19th century. Before the federal income tax of 1913, we actually made our money through tariffs. Many presidents have supported it over the years. And we had so much money in the late 1800s that we set up blue ribbon commissions on how to support schools and communities and how the federal government could actually spend that wealth ultimately to make a more prosperous nation. And we could do that again. And a lot of that has to do with bringing in money through tariffs. We've seen it. The proof is in the pudding from the first term to now, as President Trump will hold a luncheon with this faith office that has been working overtime in its own right to bring peace to the African continent. Those leaders coming to the White House last week, as well as being there for really crucial issues, not only in Africa, but in the Middle East with the Syrian people, that Greek Orthodox Church, 22 martyrs, recently dying after the failed Iranian threat against the world that the United States and Israel neutralized. But people are still suffering after that civil war and the fall of Bashir al-Assad. So pray for Christians all over. We still have an Armenian genocide. We still have Christians in China who have to go to an underground church in order to worship. Think about that every Sunday, or if you go on a Saturday, or really throughout the week when you go and attend church services or a Bible study or break bread with your fellow worshipers and friends at church, that we could do that freely in this nation. There's problems here in America, there's no question, but we can organize together in our churches, in our spheres of influence, and speak openly and freely on a daily basis, thanks to the founding documents that were put pen to paper, mind and thought into action nearly 250 years ago. And some people around the world don't have that opportunity, and that's why it's imperative for us to keep speaking, to speak freely and to bring you this sort of content so you know what's going on in your neck of the woods, in D.C., in the Beltway, and abroad. And this faith office is a crucial cornerstone of that, because you have a situation where now it's been ruled that people can make endorsements from the pulpit. They should have been able to this entire time, and some churches were afraid to do that over the years because they were 501c3 status. But in America, everyone should be able to speak and open freely, as our society has been set up to do. Now, we had an interview last week. You caught the first half of it with Mr. Jim Path. He's diving into all of these crucial issues. He's the president of the Conservative Caucus. And we had a nice opportunity to really not only catch up with him, but also dive into these crucial issues, so many of them facing the United States of America. And we're able to play that first half last Friday in case you missed it. We also have a second half of that interview. If that is available and ready, Mr. Director, that would be fantastic to play so you can get caught up on a bit of what's been going on in America right now. And Jim Path, an expert who has worked on Capitol Hill and who is diving into these issues from a policy perspective like Paula White is at the Faith Office in order to make America great again. So we'll toss that there now to you. A nice recording, a wonderful interview with the great Jim Path of the Conservative Caucus. And that's a good point as well, Jim, because most of our state legislatures are part-time. Some are full-time in nature, but Georgia's a great example of that they're in session January really through April, maybe the first week of May. And then they have their sign die to really look back at every bill that's on the table in the House and the Senate, and it really ramps up into a 48-hour spree, and so many other states are like that. And of course, we know Governor Brian Kemp, not always a fan of bringing in an emergency session of the legislature. So that's just one example of that, and a really good point for the future. But we know President Trump does have a strong legislative agenda, does remain in contact with really everyone on the Hill, especially House Speaker Mike Johnson and Senator John Thune, stating that if I was a king, I wouldn't have to talk to all these people. So we've seen now this Monday, July 7th, that he's put the tariff letters in the direction of Japan, also in the direction of South Korea. What do you see prior to the meeting tonight between Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and President Trump on the future of the Middle East, as Bibi, a friend of the United States, coming to visit the White House once again to see President Trump?
Well, I'm still, even though I've seen that Israel accepts the peace plan that Donald Trump had put forth, and they were willing to sign off on it, the 60-day ceasefire, I still haven't yet seen any movement with Hamas in Gaza or whoever is running Gaza these days. So I think it's just going to be another step where we figure out if that's making any progress. I think that there's a lot at stake, because if they can get that ceasefire done, there's a decent chance that more Arab countries in the region would join the Abraham Accords. There's talk that Saudi Arabia is seriously thinking about it, but they've got a few conditions that are required there. I think that's what's the biggest thing that's at stake with Netanyahu's meetings and what Netanyahu's actions are over the next few months. There's a real opportunity for wonderful peace in the region. If the Abraham Accords come to fruition, that also helps deal with the Iran situation. Even though Iran is still committed to being radical and their leaders were not taken out over the recent 12-day war, they're still there, and they're going to put up a strong face, whatever they want to do. But when you've got Arab countries lining up behind Israel, and there's something substantive behind it, it puts more pressure on Iran to get things done. I think that's maybe the biggest thing that's at stake right now in these meetings, is the next steps that can get the path open for an expansion of the Abraham Accords. And it would be one of Donald Trump's greatest accomplishments, maybe the greatest accomplishment as president, and he would deserve the Nobel Prize. I think he already does deserve the Nobel Prize, Peace Prize, in my opinion.
As the Pakistani government now has nominated him, along with other congressmen and other organizations throughout the United States and abroad. So he really stands a chance to being able to do that, because even, I mean, the Gulf states, it was one thing to go after Iran and say this unequivocally was wrong to attack Doha, Qatar, a traditional ally of the Iranians. But then they warned them prior, and then in turn the emir warns the president of the United States. It seems as if that was more done for show, so that the Iranian state government can say to the state media, look at what we did to retaliate, if you will. And I say retaliate in quotations there. But that did surprise me. Mahmoud Abbas, the leader of Palestine, also joining the Arab and Muslim world seemingly to almost stand up for the United States and Israel and say, enough, Iran. This is a new day, a new path forward for the cause of peace.
Well, listen, the dominoes are falling in the Middle East. That trip that Donald Trump took, meeting with various Arab countries a couple months ago, was really astounding. And prior to this thing that happened with Iran, and that's why you would see a Mahmoud Abbas coming out like he did, because they're reading the tea leaves. I mean, Mahmoud Abbas wants to be negative to Israel all he can. He's just noting that all of his potential benefactors, many of whom are not necessarily state actors, they're just people in various states, they're all getting the word from their state actors, back off. We're not going to have this anymore. You got to stop. That word's getting around, and that's why, the PLO organization that he runs over on the West Bank is maybe backing off. But there is a real opportunity here. Donald Trump is the biggest reason that it has happened, because he was determined and he was willing to be gentle with everyone while having a bit of a stick on the back end. I hope that there's something positive that comes out of it. It's a real opportunity for the world right now, at least for some decades to come, if he can pull it all off.
It almost gives a new meaning to speak softly and carry the big stick. It's really a new thing for American politics on the domestic side and internationally, and I'm sure does cause fear in the hearts of many leaders across the world when you can have B-2 bombers go into Iranian airspace, or anywhere for that matter, and go in, complete the mission, and be undetected with no casualties on either side, with no surface-to-air missiles fired. That in and of itself is remarkable. Let's take it back stateside a bit. Caroline Leavitt in the White House press briefing today, breaking some news in regards to the DOJ, the FBI, have found that there is no real viable Epstein client list, which was kind of the smoking gun that a lot were looking for in order to, I guess, bring justice to several of these perpetrators who would do the unthinkable, and it's to molest and harass and harm young minor children. Now, we know his former lover, Ghislaine Maxwell, in prison for potentially many of these crimes. Where do you see this all going? And do you see that this Department of Justice, this FBI, still remaining committed to putting those perpetrators, bringing them to justice?
Well, I'll tell you what, the entire MAGA base right now is asking the same question that you just asked, because they don't know. This is a very challenging thing for Donald Trump supporters. And the reason why is the people who are now saying these things that were just reported, beginning yesterday with that memo that came out that said there's no client list, says, and the various other things it said, and then Caroline Leavitt confirming it today. The real challenge for people is, okay, you made that conclusion, but on what basis? And the people who made the conclusion are some who were the most vocal in saying that the information needed to get out there. Here's what I see here. There's a real challenge for Donald Trump right now. He needs to be able to convince his base, with the emergence of Elon's America Party, that he's got their back on it. And I think the best way to do that is transparency. I think you need to lay significant amounts and portions of the records, just like you said you were going to do. Remember, they had that big release a few months ago at the White House where some online influencers were given binders of the Epstein files. I know one of those influencers that was there, and the information in that binder was not very significant, but they said we're going to do this in steps. Well, the only steps that we've seen is shutting down that process, not extending it. So I think they're going to have to get some information out. I've said for years that somewhere in the order of 70 to 90% of all classified documents are classified for political purposes. I would also argue that there's a decent amount of documents, although there's a little bit more reason to do this, there are a decent amount of legal documents that that are thrown into that legal box, so to speak, because we're in the middle of an investigation for political purposes. That happens too. There's sometimes that takes place. In some form or fashion, though, based on the promises made, I think Donald Trump's administration, I think that Pam Bondi and Kash Patel are going to have to release something that shows significantly proves what they're saying. Just to say trust us is not going to happen. I see a potential rift forming. I do not believe the Epstein files are the most important thing that we need to be looking at. I think they're very important, and I think they're going to reveal some really rancid activity from political and financial leaders in this country and around the world. And so that needs to be known, because these people, by and large, are making big decisions that affect all of us. But I think the real significant thing that has to take place is the Ratcliffe letter that came out last week, showing more significantly how John Brennan and Barack Obama worked out a situation to try to take down Donald Trump during his administration. That is the functional, institutional problem that needs to get taken care of. The Epstein files probably mix into something like that, but to my knowledge, John Brennan never went to Epstein Island. And so therefore, whatever is there is not going to relate to him. But the guy is determined enough to take down a sitting president if he can. These people need to be exposed as well. I think that's maybe the more significant thing that needs to be revealed to the American public, and prosecutions forthcoming. But I do believe that with the Epstein files and many of these other things, by the way, we don't even have all the JFK files. We got a significant bit more than we've ever had, but we don't have them all. I think the American people are just waiting, and the MAGA base for sure is waiting for a follow through on these promises to be transparent in these particular areas. If he can do that, then this won't metastasize into something bad. But at present, there's a wound. I'm seeing it all over social media. I'm getting asked about it a lot. I even am getting pushed back on in social media when I say the most important thing is the Radcliffe thing. People think I'm absurd. What are you talking about? They're so upset about this Epstein file thing that when I try to throw that bit into it, they go crazy. And they treat me like I'm some sort of, betrayer or something. But I know that what I'm saying is correct. I know of some key people who are saying the same thing privately right now. The most important thing is this other stuff. But Donald Trump still needs to get the info out. He needs to let people know what's going on with transparency on these Epstein documents, because otherwise he doesn't want to have to come to a place where he has to save face on this issue, because Pam Bondi and Kash Patel didn't seem to have the fortitude to move things forward.
And all of it together, regardless of where this lands, really makes Watergate look like child's play, because it really has become a web of lies that I think, to your point, Jim, if you could find, if there was lawlessness happening within the Obama administration, which we know of these meetings, we know of certain people in certain times and places, and really the communist leanings and ties of John Brennan and his anti-American activity dating back to his college days, it might lead us down a rabbit hole that will expose a lot of truth in the coming weeks and months here.
Every major problem that we are having right now in our political discourse, in the attempts at censorship and the lawfare that we have been going through over the last 10, 12 years, has its origins in Barack Obama. Now, much of this was existing in our government prior to this. But speaking of Watergate, Watergate was a horrible corruption. There's no doubt about it. But I have to tell you something. If you really look closely at the corrupting things that have been happening over the last 10 plus years, with the Russia hoax, with the 2020 elections, the Hunter Biden laptop letter, the lawfare against Donald Trump, Watergate looks like kids play. It looks like a couple guys that were standing around the corner waiting for certain politicians to come, and they had squirt guns and they squirted them unnecessarily in their suits and made them look bad on camera. Like that's really what Watergate is compared to this other thing, which is literally like a robbery and I'm saying this in a figurative way, murders. I mean, these are political schemes to destroy political opponents, whereas Richard Nixon was just trying to get a leg up on an election. And that's bad. I'm not saying it's good, but it doesn't even compare to this. That's the scale of the problem that we're looking at here. Our greatest existential risk right now is to allow deep state actors to continue down the path that they've been going down over the last 20 plus years, but mostly since the Obama administration, because Barack Obama weaponized our government and institutionalized it against the American people in a very third world fashion. And we have to extract ourselves from that. And if we can do that by exposing communists, as you rightly call him, like John Brennan, and expose the communist efforts on these LA riots and the No Kings demonstrations, which were funded in part literally by communists. If we can get to that place where we can expose this for what it is, then we can get ourselves on a good path. It's bad enough the risks that we have with our budgetary situation, which is just out of control. But these institutions will keep any budgetary effort, positive budgetary change in the future from happening if they can, by keeping these problems embedded into our federal system so that the American public can't do, again, what this institutions didn't want, which is for Donald Trump to get elected again. So we're probably never going to see another Donald Trump. But if we want anything like him, we better get this solved, and quickly.
Jim Paff, president of the Conservative Caucus, and I could say for this week, to hit it off as a home run right after the 4th of July, this is the interview of the week. There's no question about it. We love your in-depth analysis of the Hill and everything outside the Beltway as well, sir. We look forward to having you again on Right Side Broadcasting Network Live very soon.
Thanks. Great to be with you.
And always a joy to have Jim Paff of the Conservative Caucus with us on Right Side Broadcasting Network's live desk. As you see a live look at the East Room, President Trump to hold a luncheon with the Faith Office, and one that will be a huge success because this group of people, I think, really deserve a lot more credit. The pastors and religious leaders involved in this, they are bringing a biblical worldview to solving crises around the world, especially the Christian communities who have to practice in the shadows or who have had literal genocide committed against their communities simply because they believe in the gospel. And this group is responsible for the freedom and peace that the African continent is now experiencing. A crucial piece of the negotiation had to do with not only Steve Witkoff's efforts as Middle East envoy, but also Pastor Paula White leading this group with the Republic of the Rwanda and the Democratic Republic of the Congo also coming together after 30 years of fighting. 6 million people dying because of tribal warfare, but it was this faith office that started those conversations of bringing these leaders together in order to find peace on the African continent and throughout the entire world. So we know that many people still suffering simply because of what they believe. And as they enjoy a lovely lunch at the White House under a beautiful portrait of our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, who definitely suffered for his belief system. There's no question about that, as he preserved a nation through a horrible, terrible civil war. And we are hoping that that does not take place again with all of the divisions that do exist. It's a terrible thing to watch as Syria is going through that right now, and other countries who have dealt with these kinds of conflicts in the past, but the Faith Office working diligently to make sure those things do not continue. Thank you to our sponsors on the right side of history, RSBN Donate. If you like what you see here at the right side of history, please feel free to give your well-earned dollars to rsbnetwork.com/donate or text RSBN to 801-801. We're very grateful for anything that could be shared as we are bringing the truth to you. We bring you the speeches in their entirety, the press conferences, as well as everything happening inside and outside of the Beltway covering your president, your vice president, and the 119th Congress and the government you put into place back on November 5th of last year. rsbnetwork.com/donate or an easy way to text RSBN to 801-801. We are very grateful for your financial support as we take on the legacy media and those who might be financially more powerful, but that freedom of speech, it's a pesky, pesky First Amendment that we love here at the network and want to share with you as true citizen journalists, anchors, hosts, and great writers, as well as producers and directors here at the network. So you can catch the written word at rsbnetwork.com/newsletter. If you need to scrub back or don't have time to catch every single live broadcast, you can also read what's happening in depth on countless different issues facing the United States and the world. rsbnetwork.com/newsletter. A great way to find that, including a Sunday devotional that's really quite nice. There's also Kalshi.com/RSBN for all of those questions on Elon Musk. Will he make that third party America First party? Or will President Trump make some pardons this year? Also, who will win the Major League Baseball All-Star Game, the Midsummer Classic, tomorrow night from Truist in the beautiful city of Atlanta, Georgia. So I hope you tune in for that. Should be a great game between the American League and the National League and determine who will have home field advantage in the World Series. So it's sports, it's culture, it's music, it's politics. All those questions, make your trades and bets at Kalshi.com/RSBN. There might even be or not. I mean, literally, it's a question on everything at Kalshi. So thank you for your sponsorship. On the right side of history, we're awaiting President Trump hosting a luncheon with the Faith Office there with the executive branch and pastors, patriots, good people who have come together to literally wear their hearts on their sleeves and dedicate their lives, their trust, their sacred honor to this biblical foundational principles of this great nation, that we believe in one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And as you look there with the American flag and the presidential seal on full display right under Abraham Lincoln's portrait from the 19th century, a man who suffered a lot and someone who had many, many losses in his life, but went on to become the 16th president of the United States and ultimately preserve a union that was deeply divided on a number of issues, including the scourge of slavery. And although we found that all men are created equal and ultimately delivered on that promise, there's a modern slavery happening. And it's the scourge of human trafficking, labor trafficking, things that this administration is fighting on a daily basis. As President Trump said Friday, before he visited the flood zones of Central Texas and Kerrville in the beautiful hill country of the Lone Star State, 10,000 of the 300,000 children that were lost during the Otto Penn administration have been found, accounted for, and are safe. And thanks be to God for that. This office has a lot to do with fighting trafficking, labor and human and sex trafficking and all of the sorts that sadly take place, and sadly that this country, by the numbers, the biggest consumer of that. And it's hard to even say or even to think about, but it's a reality we must all be aware of, and that the whole of government, state, local, federal, also private and public partnerships can be made, can be done in order to stop these things. The Faith Office working on that, as well as the peace of the world and throughout the world, especially with those suffering from genocide and from not being able to simply worship as they choose and where they choose. And we saw that recently, sadly, after the ending of the 12-day war in Syria, with 22 parishioners, believers from the Greek Orthodox Church outside of Damascus were martyred on behalf of their faith because they were simply practicing what they believe and were targeted in that ugly civil war taking place ever since Bashar al-Assad was removed from power. A sign that the Iranian government is really losing influence throughout the Middle East, but still in these power vacuum moments throughout different regions of the world, you have situations where Christians can be in the crosshairs, and many legacy items, again, will not even touch on these topics, but we are unafraid here on the right side of history to express not only our condolences and our prayers for those suffering in these moments, but also showcasing an administration and policies that are actually trying to do something about it, not ignore it, not sweep it under the rug, as the last administration did, that regardless of a Republican or Democrat label, that everyone can come to the table here as believers, as pastors, as parishioners, as those who believe in the Word of God, to go out there and actually make a difference in their workplaces, in their private lives, and in their daily communion with their fellow believers. And this office deserves so much praise. They are truly the unsung heroes who are helping to shape not only the Trump administration policies on a daily basis, but also bring peace and prosperity to the world. And those stories to you, the American people, that you might not be aware of, because sadly these things do not get out there in mass media. For example, the people in China. Those believers have to be underground. It's been something that has been very tragic to cover and watch over the course of a number of years now, but maybe things will change with that, with an office in place led by Pastor Paula White, really doing an extraordinary job with that, as President Trump will hold a luncheon there live in the East Room. We'll take you there when it all happens. You see the seal of the president, the podium ready to go, and he has some remarks. After you caught this morning, President Trump meeting with Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary General, former Dutch Prime Minister as well, discussing mostly the Russia-Ukraine conflict. And what has changed there really hasn't been much that's changed with that specific conflict, the exception that Vladimir Putin continues to say nice things to President Trump, but then will continue to surgically strike. And they're in a situation of a stalemate right now. Russia has most of what it has wanted to acquire, especially with those coastal cities and those ports. Very, very valuable in a sense of trade, and also what was once part of the USSR. But we know, as President Trump pointed out, he's a KGB agent. He's someone who confused and was very dishonest with living predecessors of President Trump, and they really did not know how to handle him. And ultimately, he invaded Ukraine. He always moved when it was another president, and dating back really to Bill Clinton, but especially under George W. Bush with Crimea and obtaining that land. And then with Barack Hussein Obama, he had no fear of him. Vladimir Putin would call him a communist socialist on a regular basis, as he wasn't so wrong about that, sadly. And then the biggest, the grand prize, the apple of his eye, as President Trump aptly pointed out with Putin, he wanted to take back the Ukraine, and 3.5 years ago invaded the sovereign nation of Ukraine. And it's been an absolute tragedy, mostly for Russian and Ukrainian military officials who are devoted to serving their countries. And sadly, plenty of casualties along with that conflict that President Trump simply wants to come to an end. And the NATO Secretary General laying out there that President Trump is offering up these Patriot missiles, but it's Europe that has to pay for these different devices, military equipment, and assistance. And the reason President Trump moving in that direction is because of the dishonesty from the Kremlin. So ultimately the goal, though, peace. And he's willing to talk to everyone on a daily basis, whether that be Vladimir Putin, Vladimir Zelensky. And we have seen that now over the course of weeks and weeks here, really 6 months at the job. And as President Trump said, I'm working overtime to clean this up the mess that the Otto Penn administration left for the American people. And we've seen that in regards to a number of different topics. So we'll stay on that story. We'll watch as it goes on, and we pray for peace, not only in the Middle East as it has so successfully been achieved recently, but also for the great Ukrainian and Russian people who sadly just have very, very bad leadership and really terrible people at the top who continue to perpetuate this unending war and this stalemate. And sadly, with the weapons of war, the way they are now with the technologies, we should fight for peace as this president is doing on a daily basis, because warfare is changing rapidly. We saw that during Flag Day and the military parade, and these new technologies that are out there that are manless tanks, manless planes, drones, even literal dogs that were walking down that military route that can go in there. And it's good to see that the attempt to make sure there are not casualties, human casualties, but warfare rapidly expanding technologically speaking. And it's something we have to make sure that the cause of peace needs to be worked for in a greater way, perhaps now more than ever, as President Trump is holding a luncheon with the Faith Office. And we should be expecting him relatively momentarily, as it's just past 12:30 at the White House on the East Coast and 9:30 in the morning on the West Coast. So good afternoon and good morning, America. It's a joy to be with you. I'm Robert McNeely with Right Side Broadcasting Network Live, and that is live there in the East Room. You're looking at that image of leaders with the Faith Office, all led by Paula White, pastors and Bible-believing Christians who are working in their communities and within the Beltway in order to help shape President Trump's foreign policy. And it has been very clear that peace is worth working for, that you should be able to call and talk to people, even if you're on a different side or different view as they are. Famously, as he was invited by then President Obama, President-elect Trump asked him, well, why haven't you called Rocket Man Kim Jong-un in North Korea? Because Obama told President Trump, you're going to have to deal with this. This will be a war. He said, well, why did you try calling him? And apparently that did not happen. And then there were a series of letters and conversations, the meeting in Singapore, and then ultimately President Trump crossed that 59th parallel, the DMZ zone between South Korea and North Carolina, and you saw the leaders over the years with their binoculars, looking miles away over that border. And little Rocket Man welcomed the President of the United States, said, please come over, my friend. And seemingly people on both sides very nervous over it, but they had a good time, all smiles. And that was done from engaging and trying to understand the other side. So it's worth it. That's true strength. That's true leadership. As Robert F. Kennedy, our great HHS secretary, has put it, peace is actually harder to work for. And that's something his uncle and his father worked for years and years ago during the Cold War era. And this is something that this president is really putting at the forefront of the MAGA agenda. And it is tougher. It's easy to cause conflict. It's easy to start a war. It actually takes character. It takes integrity to stop them from taking place in the first place. And this has been something that's been very different from the neocon and neoliberal agenda of roughly the last 30 or so years, especially in Washington, D.C., with a mentality of shoot first, ask questions later. President Trump always willing to come to the table. People are standing in the room. That means President Trump is about to enter. Let's take it there live now to the White House in the East Room for a luncheon with the Faith Office.
nice sound that is, isn't it? What a nice. Please sit down. Hi, Scott. So I always said that if I ever became president, I would play that all the time, no matter where I went in the building. We gotten to do it. I wanted it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. It's so beautiful. And pardon me for being late. We had a great meeting with NATO, the Secretary General, and we're going to do something a little different for this country. We're going to supply weapons to NATO at a large amount. They're going to deliver the weapons, and they're going to pay for 100% of the weapons. So, a little different. A little different. Hi, John. So we're really, that's a big thing. And we thought we had 4 deals, Howard, right, with Putin. Somehow they end and we get off the phone. Oh, that was a very nice conversation. And then he sends missiles into buildings someplace. I said, what was that all about? So anyway, so we're going to be doing that with NATO. And it's fully approved, fully done. And we'll send them a lot of weapons of all kinds. And they're going to deliver those weapons immediately to the site of the war. And they're going to pay for 100% of them. This all was made possible by going from 2 to 5% a month ago when I went there. So, yeah. And those countries, those European countries, and I said, look, we have an ocean. It's not fair that we did, because under the Biden administration, we paid about 3.5 times more than they did. We were in for $350 billion. We were in for 350 and they were in for 100. So, which really meant one thing, because you have great business leaders here. It meant very simply that they were better negotiators than our president was. But so this is a very important thing, and hopefully that will come to an end at the end of 50 days. If we don't have a deal, then we're going to have to do. We have no choice but to do secondary tariffs. You call it secondary tariffs, which are pretty tough, which we don't want to have to do. But let's see what happens. But we thought we had a deal. Numerous times, I'd get home, I'd say, First Lady, I had the most wonderful talk with Vladimir. I think we're finished. And then I'll turn on the television, or she'll say to me one time, wow, that's strange, because they just bombed a nursing home. I said, what? So we don't like that. But I want to thank you all for being here, and welcome to the first ever White House Summit of Faith and Business Leaders. You're really some of the greatest business leaders in the country. When I looked at some of the names, I said, whoa, that's big stuff we have here today. In fact, before I was president, I would have been very intimidated, but now I'm president, so I don't have to. But today we celebrate the core values that built this country: and freedom, hard work, risk-taking, and above all, trust in Almighty God. You're very much in God in this room, and it's very nice. You're business leaders who believe strongly. We have some business leaders that don't believe strongly, and somehow you and I don't like them as much. But I want to thank Pastor Paula White. She's been my friend for a long time. And John, for convening this incredible group. Her husband's one of the most talented musicians in the world. Stand up, John. Stand up. Okay? I stole a couple of his songs for the rallies, and he never sued me, so I was very happy. But we all come from the same place, right? So it was great, and we appreciate it, John. Thanks as well to Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who's doing a fantastic job. He goes on television and he calms the market. I go on television, I rile the market, and I say, we better send him in there, Howard, right? And the market's become so calm and nice. So you're doing a good job, Scott. Thank you very much. You make any deals today? We got a lot of them, boy, I tell you, we have. But the best deal is just sending out the paper. They keep saying, well, he hasn't made the deal. Well, we made a number of deals, but why isn't he doing deals? Because the paper is better than any deal we can make. Do you understand? The people in this, Kevin, they asked you that question this morning. You were great this morning, but they said, well, when is he going to start making deals? And the next time we could say, just no, every time he sends out a document that you have to pay 35%, 25%. or 50%, or in one case 100%. Those deals, you can't beat those deals, but we're still willing to talk. And they all, literally every country wants to make a deal. We're in a good position. You would call it a position of strength. I don't talk that way because I'm a politician now, unfortunately. And I don't want to talk about strength. I just want to say we have to be treated fairly because we were ripped off on trade and the military for, we protected other nations. Nobody paid us. Nobody did anything for us. Nobody helped us. And that's much different. NATO is a much different situation now. When I got in, I believe we were paying for 100% of NATO. And now they're paying, they went from 2%, but they were paying 1% to 5% that they're paying. It's a big difference. It's about $1 trillion difference. And they're wealthy, for the most part, wealthy countries. And some of them they're among the most powerful, among the wealthiest countries in the world. So they're going to start paying, and they want to pay. And we had a great meeting about 1 month ago that set the stage for what happened here. But it's very important. So I want to thank Scott for being here. I want to thank Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick. You are doing a good job, Howard. Am I right when I say I really don't want deals? I just want the paper to get sent? Right? It's true. I don't know if this is on television. Yeah, it's always on television. SBA administrator and a great person, cabinet member, a friend of mine for a long time, Kelly Loeffler. Kelly, you're doing great. She's small business, right? She only does small business, but when you add it all up, it's the biggest bank in the world by a factor of about 10, right? She's doing a great job. And director of the White House Faith Office, Jenny Korn, who's also amazing. Thanks, Jenny. From the earliest days of our republic, the steady compass of faith has guided the strong hands of American workers, builders, and entrepreneurs like really no other. Our country was founded by pilgrims and believers, and every generation since, Americans of faith have built our communities and forged new industries and enriched our country by millions and millions of people and ways. John D. Rockefeller, J.C. Penney, Charles Goodyear, Truett Cathy, and frankly, we have people I could name right in this room sitting here that their names are every bit as big as that. They were inspired by their love of God, and now the proud tradition continues with all of you. And this group reminds us, as a nation that prays is a nation that prospers. And you see that. I think one of the reasons we went so bad is they really wanted to take God and religion out of your lives. And there was nobody to, look up to. There was just nobody. It was, we were freewheeling. And we can't freewheel. No, we have to bring religion back into the country, and we're starting to do that, I think, at a very high level, Paula, a very, very high level. You see churches are starting to fill up again. Under the Trump administration, America is prospering, and America is winning like never before. Our country is back. So I was in Qatar, Saudi Arabia, UAE, and then a month ago we were in Europe with all of the NATO countries, European countries, and plus Canada. And almost everyone said almost the exact same words. They said, 1 year ago, your country was dead. Terrible term, but that's what it is. Your country was dead. We thought it was finished. And now you've got the hottest country anywhere in the world. It's true. Is the hottest country. Did you see they found $25 billion of essentially profits last night? They said, where did it come from? It came from management, but it came from tariffs. And it came from, good business skill. And I've always made money. Now I'm making it for you people. I've had good days and bad days, but in good days and bad days, I always found a way to make money. And we have to do that for our country. But and we did 188 billion in Scott just now, 188 billion in tariffs, 188, and we haven't even started yet. That's only for cars and steel. We actually have barely started. The economy is roaring, business confidence is soaring, incomes are up, prices are down, and inflation is dead. It's dead. We have a bad Fed chairman, really bad. if he would lower the rates, and I tried being nice to the guy, it doesn't help. He's like a knucklehead. No, he's a knucklehead. A stupid guy. He really is. You know, each point, think of this, each point costs us $360 billion. 1 point, $360 billion. 2 points, you got $700 billion. And we're way high. We're at 450 or 425? 450? And how do you go borrow money at 1% when the Fed has you at 450? And, you know, it's not that easy. I get angry at them. Why are we paying so much? You know, because he's got you up at this number. And we should always be the lowest. Now that we're doing great, we have no inflation. Think of it. Our stock market hit record highs. Everything's hitting a record high. We're really running good with no inflation. And we should be at 1%. We should be less than 1%. I think Switzerland is the lowest at like 0.5%. We should be lower because without us, there's no world. I don't want to sound overly aggressive, but without us, you have no world. And we've put our country on solid footing. We had a man as president who was the worst administration, worst president in the history of our country. We've had some bad ones, but he's the worst ever. What he did at our border can never be forgotten. 25 million people allowed to pour into our country, all unchecked, unvetted, murderers, gang leaders, gangsters, people that you don't want in our country under any means, terrorists. We have many terrorists in our country, and we're watching them close. Tom Homan, by the way, is doing a phenomenal job. Kristi Noem is doing a phenomenal job. We had last week, it was reported, nobody, not one, even I don't know if I believe that number, but it's done, the numbers are done by liberals. So they said, did you know that? They said we had nobody, zero, cross our border. It's the first time that ever happened. Zero. Did you hear that? It's like crazy. But we have people from mental institutions, insane asylums even. That's a mental institution on steroids, essentially. But we had people coming into our country. We can't have them. And we have to get them out. But we can never forgive this administration, this past. And I'm okay with administrations. I mean, I can go through a Democrat administration, say, hey, look, they worked hard, they tried hard. But the things that they did to this country, we can never, ever forget it. From the rigged elections to the border, to the transgender for everybody, from men playing in women's sport. Do you ever take a look at some of these records? There was a long-distance race, a marathon, where they had a great female runner, a number of them, but they had one in particular, and they had just an average male runner who had transitioned. He won the race at the end of the day by 5 hours and 14 minutes. They waited for 5 hours. The weightlifting records are better, though. The weightlifting records are better. You know, the way they took a record that hasn't been broken for 18 years. 18 years. And, you know, they'd add a quarter of an ounce on each side of the barbell. And they'd just, a little tiny piece of stuff. She'd go up and she couldn't get it up. And this guy comes along. Have you lifted before? Yes, at a low level. He was a low-level lifter as a man, but transitioned. And he goes up to that thing. Bing, 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 bing. Could have done it all day long. Broke the record by 119 pounds. The whole thing is crazy. The swimming records are pretty good, too. You got to see that. I told the story. You had this great group of grew up with each other because, you know, they sort of swam at the top level. And they were swimming, and the one girl was seriously injured. She looked left, and she saw the same girl she grew up with, Kelly, in California. Same girls, you know, that young age, they sort of rise to the top. She looked to the right, she saw the same girls, but there was this giant standing right next to her. And he had transitioned. You probably heard this. He had transitioned. And she'd never seen her before. And when the race was started, He blew by her so fast that she suffered massive windburn. They had to take her. And he got out of the race, and he went and had a little lunch, and then he came back and watched the rest of the young ladies finish up. The whole thing is crazy, and it's so demeaning to women. It's so demeaning to women. But it is what it is. But what they did to this country, and we ended all of that, as you probably know. We ended the woke. The woke stuff is no longer in favor. But we're doing fantastically. Wages for blue-collar workers have surged by the most in over 60 years. Gas prices have reached the lowest level in 5 decades. Actually, we're going to see some really good numbers. Drill, baby, drill. Drill, baby, drill. I got to make sure that people can afford to produce the gas. But the gas has gone to the lowest level in decades. And you're seeing $1.99, $1.98, and I saw $1.95 at certain states. Not California, because every time it goes down, they add taxes onto. You're at $6, $7. They just add taxes. All they do is they keep adding taxes. Terrible government. He may be a candidate, but if you go by success, you can't have him be a candidate. And on Friday, it was announced that the United States Treasury ran a budget surplus. Is that true, Scott? In June, for the first time in many, many decades. Wow. I didn't know that. That's a good one, too. I'm going to have to put that in my repertoire, Scott. But the biggest victory of all came 10 days ago when I signed the one beautiful bill into law. Right? And just as I promised, we did something that was amazing. Everybody was against it. I wanted it. I know Scott and Howard liked the idea of it too, but it was very risky because they've never done anything like it in terms of this. It's the biggest bill ever passed, of its kind ever passed, by far. And they want 3 or even as many as 7 bills. And I said, the problem is that in the one big bill, everybody gets something. When you cut it into 7s, there are 4 or 5 of them, or 3 of them, right, Kevin, that you get nothing. All they're going to do is fight it. You'll never get them passed. And so we went with it. I was on a show called Deface the Nation. Have you heard of it? They're so bad. They're so bad. These people, they're so average. But I was on this show, Deface the Nation. Ladies and gentlemen, President Donald J. Trump on Deface the Nation. No, but they're all so bad. But we were on the show, and she said to me a question. She said, what would you call this bill? Would you want to have it called One Big Beautiful, or would you rather see it? I said, what I want is one great, big, beautiful bill. And Speaker Mike Johnson, John Thune, they were watching, and they said, what a great name for the bill. We actually ended up calling it that. We took the great out. I actually liked it even better. One great, big, beautiful. But they said, let's a little bit of a low key. But we got to pass. But we got to pass because there's something for everybody. And there are things that people don't like, but you need them for the country. You have to do some things that are great for the country, but they wouldn't necessarily get the votes. And we got the votes. Think of it, not one Democrat vote. All the goodies that we got, not one Democrat voted in either the Senate or the House. And we're talking about tax cuts and business. So many different things that are so good, right? Not one Democrat vote went with us, not one. So we had to get almost every. In the House, we got 218 to 2. Think of that, 218 to 2. Nobody could do that. It's never been done. And that says, and we have Rand Paul Jr., who's a guy we call him Rand Paul Jr. because he always votes no. A guy named Massey always votes no. We had another guy who I helped very, very strongly, helped him with a very personal situation, got him through it. And he voted no. I said, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And then we went to the Senate, and you had, of course, Rand Paul, who always votes no. They call him Just Say No. I think they think it's... No, I think I got him elected. I had to go to Kentucky twice to do rallies to get him elected, twice. But they forget. A lot of politicians forget. And then we had a couple of others. Susan Collins, she's another one. Just say no. She always brutal. And we had some people. Tillis, I guess, was a no, right? He was a no. And they said he was brave. He said no to the president, but he resigned the following morning. So anyway, that was terrible, I thought. But we couldn't lose more than three. We had three that said no. And so we won that 50 to 3. So it's pretty close. And a senator came over to me and said, I can't believe you won the House. Great guy, this senator, Eric Schmidt, who's doing a great job. He said, I can't believe you won the House. I said, actually, so remember 218 to 2, we needed 3, so we could have lost 3. We actually only lost 2. I said, no, actually, the Senate was tougher than the House of the 2. That question is asked to me, who was tougher? I'd say the Senate was tougher, actually, amazingly. Shouldn't have been. We had a slightly bigger margin in the Senate proportionally, but it was brutal. It was, they said, sir, we have 12 hard no's. You know, hard no is not recoverable, right? 30 in the morning, Mike Johnson called up. It could be 20, but it's at least 12. So could you call them, sir? And I said, what time? I said, 2:30 in the morning. And we have to win, right? We can never give up. The people in this room, right? You never gave up. Mike's supporter right from day one, and her husband with a bad damn back, right? How's his back? Is he okay? Every time I see him, he's got a bad back, but he's got a lot of cash, so. A lot. He's got a lot of cash. But no, they're great people. Thank you very much. I do appreciate it. You were there right at the beginning, you know, always was there. But we have a situation where we call up these people at 2:30 in the morning, and I called up. I got along with them all great. I liked them, but they're tough. You know, they're congressmen. When you're a congressman for 20 years or you're a senator for years, you're smart and you're a survivor because you go through all sorts of hell. But I called up Congressman. I said, Jim, hi, Jim, how are you doing? He said, fine, sir. I said, family's good, yeah. He said, sir, you have my vote. I never said what I was calling about. I said, I do, thank you very much. But how do you know what I'm calling you about? Well, I said, sir, I've been your friend for 2.5 years. You've never called me during normal hours. So I assume that if you're calling me at 2:30 in the morning, you're not calling me to ask me how's the family doing. I said, yeah. So, pretty good. So I called up everyone. I think everyone with the exception of one had to speak a little bit. But I call up, sir, you have my vote. Thank you. Sir, you have my vote. Think of that. And we got 12 votes in a matter of, I called back 20 minutes later. I said, you got all the votes. That's spirit, right? That's spirit. They wanted to maybe hear. They wanted to have a little love. You know, the sad part is that some of the best people are the people that don't get any publicity because they go with something because it's good. So a guy like some of the people I'm talking about, but some of the people where you didn't even have to call, they vote yes, 100%. You don't have to waste any time with them. You don't have to beg them, come on, you can do it, come on, let's have lunch, let's have dinner. And then you have other guys that want you to suffer. I mean, some of these people that I just mentioned, whose names I just mentioned, you got to go through hell. And the ones that are really good and they love the country and they're doing right. I mean, what's the alternative? You know, the alternative here, you're getting the biggest tax cut in history. And with the Democrats, you're going to have the biggest tax increase in history. Now, we could go into 100 other details. They're equally as crazy. So I said, so what's the difference? So you're going to say no, and you're going to have the biggest tax cut in history this way, and you're going to have the biggest tax increase the other way, and you'll probably end up in a depression, because if you ever did that, it would be a shock to the whole world. That's what happened in 1929. I said, so you're going to vote for the other side? Well, sir, I'll do what's really appropriate. You know, the losers. But you have that. Really, they're grandstanders, you know. You have grandstanders, and you have them in every business. And the Democrat has far fewer. They're grandstanders, but, you know, the one thing about them, they have bad policy. They're evil people in many ways, but they stick together. You don't have it where you don't have, I don't want to use too many names, but You don't have a Mitt Romney in the midst who makes you suffer. You don't have some of the people that I mentioned who make it so hard. They make it so hard. And the alternative is one of two things. You can either get all these things and make the economy strong, or you're going to literally have perhaps a depression where you people so rich, so beautiful, so nice to look at, will be totally busted. And let's see how long your wife stays with you. You're beautiful. She'll stay with you for about 3 weeks and she'll say, darling, I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore, darling. I'm leaving you. I said to one guy, he's a very, very unattractive man, but he's smart and he's rich. And I said, you better hope we get this thing passed because your wife will be gone within about 2 minutes. He said, you're right. But so we had a tremendous success, and it gives you the biggest tax cut in American history, the largest spending cut in American history, and the largest border security investment of all time. And again, we're doing great on the border. I almost say, why do we need it? We have such good numbers, but you need it. Ultimately, you're going to need it. I built hundreds of miles of border wall. Without that, you could have never had the results that we had. We up the American family. We increased the tax credit and made school permanent. We made it all permanent, the school choice. And we expanded school choice. And for every newborn child, we created what's called the Trump accounts. And this was Michael Dell. I don't know if Michael Dell's here, but Michael Dell, well, you tell him I mentioned his name because it's true. He would call me for 3-4 years. I didn't know Michael. I just know he's a great success story and a great guy. That's all he talked about was the account where you put $1,000 and as a baby is born, $1,000 into an account and you let it be invested by, I guess you pick out some good money determinant or fund or index. And I guess at a certain age, like when they're 30, goes earlier than that, but when they're 30, they're supposed to have like $75,000. That would have a huge impact on their lives. And it could even be more than that. So that passed. And, it's funny, that was one of the easiest things we had to get passed. Can you believe it? I thought so many people loved it. They actually call it the Trump accounts. And I didn't fight for that name, right? I didn't fight for that. I said, that's a very great honor. But Michael Dell was amazing. That's what he said he's going to invest billions of dollars doing it for children. He's going to put a lot of his money into it. But even more importantly than the economic success, we're restoring the spirit of our country. America is once again an optimistic nation. We were so down. It was depressing. We were so down. That's why I ran again. I got cheated. They rigged the election. But I said, if I didn't think I won, I would have never run. Because that's like a poll, right? You lose, you lose. It's worse than a poll. But I saw the lack of spirit in this country. For 4 years, it was a dark, horrible place. And for people of religion, they were arresting your pastors. They were arresting if you went to church and you had a service outside. And the reason outside, because you had the COVID. And you could go outside. They'd arrest everybody for even having the service. I'll tell you, religion took a big hit because of the way they treated all of us. And we now have a confident nation, an optimistic nation, and we have one nation under God, and we'll always keep that term. And we're bringing back, very importantly, and not just evangelicals or Protestants or all religions, we're bringing them back into our country. As president, I've ended the radical left war on faith, and we're once again protecting religious freedom like never before in our country. We're protecting it like never before. We're getting rid of the Johnson Amendment that didn't let the pastors and ministers and everybody speak about politics. Now you're able to speak about politics, Paula. You can say, I don't like that guy. And they don't take away your tax-exempt status. They take away tax-exempt. And I'll tell you, remember when that started? It was at the meeting room before I ran, 2015, a year before the election. And I was with 50 faith leaders. They were great, very well-known people, mostly Protestant, but you had rabbis. You had an imam, 2 imams. And we were talking, and I said, I'd love to have your endorsement. And they looked at me like, what? I'd love to have your endorsement. We have such respect for you, and you control it, really very powerful. And they looked at me, they didn't say anything. Do you remember that? And I said, what's wrong with these people? I didn't know about the Johnson Amendment. Don't forget, I never did this stuff before. It wasn't like I ran. I was on the other side. I was on the same side as you. You write contributions to people that you like. But I never ran, so I didn't know about the Johnson Amendment. And I called Paula and Jenny aside. I said, could I ask you, when I said I'd want your support, your political support and endorsement, they looked at me very weird. What's going on? Well, sir, there's a thing called the Johnson Amendment. And if they even speak about anything having to do with politics, they will immediately take away their tax-exempt status. And if they lose the tax-exempt status in your world, that means you might as well close up your church. I said, you got to be kidding. So I can't really. And I told them, we had another meeting a couple of months later, and I said, you people in theory are the most powerful people. You're more powerful than man or woman because we have more than 50. Let's assume men and women are 50-50, but you have 80% between all the different religions. I said, you have more power than anybody, but you're not allowed to use your power. I said, we're going to get rid of that because people want to hear what you have to say more than anybody else, pretty much. And we did get rid of it, and we launched something that's great. And now you see people, if they like somebody, they're able to talk about that somebody for office, right, Jenny? We're able to talk about a certain politician that has your values and likes your religion. It's okay. And we got rid of that. Was Lyndon Johnson, a very powerful guy. And he had a problem with a pastor, I think in Houston. And the pastor was not a fan of his, and he put the clamps on the guy. He really did. Amazing, actually. And we opened it up. I looked at him, and we're up 68 stories in the air at Trump Tower, and in this beautiful conference room. I look down, I see people walking up and down the street. I said, that means that person walking up and down the street, any one of them have more power than you do because you're not allowed to even talk about it. You were even afraid to talk about it, but they're not afraid any longer, and I think they appreciate it. As president, I've ended the radical left war on faith, and we're once again protecting religious freedom instead of destroying it. And God is once again welcomed back into our public square. It's very important. And I stopped the Biden administration's persecutions of Christians and pro-life activists. They would put people in jail if they even uttered the word. And, well, look at me. I mean, look what happened to me. I was under investigation more than the late, great Alphonse Capone. Think of it. Al Capone would kill people for dinner. If he left the room and he didn't like them, he'd have them shot, killed, buried under a building someplace as part of the foundation of a building. They're all over the place. And I said I had more time under investigation than the legendary Alphonse Capone or probably anybody else. But I had a lot of good people with me, and most importantly, I had the base with me at a level that it actually became stronger. The one thing I did that was very helpful, I was indicted 5 times. Think of that. Indicted. That wasn't a word that was in my father's looking down, my mother's looking down. That my son's not supposed to be indicted, I think. I got indicted 5 times, impeached 2 times. All bullshit, right? All terrible stuff. And I got impeached for making a perfect phone call. Good luck. Congratulations. I had a guy come up to me, a secretary of energy from before. Sir, could you call up, of all people, President Zelensky? And I called him. I actually held off. He must have come 10 times. Please, sir. It's because they wanted to do business or something, oil and gas. Who the hell knows what they wanted? You can imagine what they wanted, but they wanted, would you call up President Zelensky? And I did. When I finally got him, I said, congratulations on your win. He had just won. This is early in the process. Should have never been, that war should have never taken place, by the way. If the election weren't rigged, that war would never be happening right now. Millions of people being killed. That war would never be happening. But would you call up? So I say, hello, President. How are we doing? Everything good? Good. Congratulations on your big victory. Wonderful job. Great, great, great. Hang up, that's it. I get indicted for making a phone call. I told that secretary, who wasn't the smartest bulb, He wasn't Rick Perry. You don't want him on your debate team, let me put it that way. Rick, you're not going to be on my debate team, Rick. But he's the one that asked me to do it, Rick Perry. And I said, thanks, Rick. That was a wonderful suggestion. I just got indicted over your stupid call. This is what we have to put up with, right? This is what we have to do. We have to put up with things. But it's been an amazing period of time, and we've straightened out so many bad things in this country. I created a Presidential Commission on Religious Liberty and established the Department of Justice Task Force to eradicate anti-Christian bias, because you have a very big anti-Christian bias that you don't think about and you don't hear about it. I established the White House Faith Office to defend and represent people of all faiths, and it's located in the White House. You've never had an office. You've never had that. And Jenny and Paul are there all the time, but we have it in the White House, so people can call up and complain, or they can call up and say, you're doing a great job, whatever. But we have it actually in the White House. Nobody's ever done that. We've restored the fundamental principle that God created two genders, male and female. That was a tough one. Parents' rights, where the parents' rights have been taken away from them in schools. You look at some of these school boards, it's like they're brutal dictatorships, and we brought it all back. The parents have the control now, and last Monday we effectively eliminated the infamous, as I said, Johnson Amendment, such a big deal, and various other amendments and things that really took away your free speech. That's what they've done. They've taken away free speech. I also want to recognize the incredible contribution of our great First Lady, Melania, and she says hello. And Melania did the Be Best initiative in supporting children in our foster care system. She visits a lot of children, a lot. Yesterday we went to the game, the soccer game. I don't know if you saw it in the Meadowlands. It was incredible. And she's always thinking about the children that have a hard time and helping America's young people reach their fullest potential. And it's remarkable to think that it was only 1 year ago this week that my time on earth nearly ended. And if you look at that, God was with me, because that's something. In theory, I should not be with you today. Well, I believe that my life was saved by God to really make America great again. I really believe that. I think I have a son. He's a great shooter, like a championship shooter. Don and Eric was a great shooter, both of them. But they said that at that distance with that gun, you didn't have a chance. And we turned the head at the right time, didn't we? Huh? We turned the head at the right time. So, I don't know, some people say it was lucky, and some people say something else. I say something else. I think God helped us. So I always believed in giving back to this nation, a nation that we love so much, and I know that everyone lives by that same sacred principle. The people in this room do, I can tell you. I hate when I see complainers, people that complain and they don't do anything about it. Like, in many cases, the media, not all of the media. I must add something because we won in a landslide. Think of it, we won every swing state. We won by millions of votes. We won the popular vote. We won there's a district vote that's very interesting. It's where the whole map looks red for a Republican, by the way. But the whole map came out, I think it was 2,750 to 505. Think of that. That's broken into little districts, little areas. We had an unbelievable election, and so I don't know, somebody said, how do you win without the press? But we have a hidden press, and the real hidden press and the hidden vote is the people and the word of mouth. Word of mouth is more important than the press, and they see what we do, and they see how we do it. I want to thank all of you and your great communities, and, it's a blessing to our country that you're here. And a blessing to our country that you become so successful and so great. And people look up to you, have no idea. You don't know We take things for granted. You don't know. The people in this room are amazing. I even, looking at that list, I really said, that's something great. And you're all believers. I think, Paula, you wouldn't have invited people that were, not a lot of, is there an atheist in the room? Any atheists? I don't think so. I wouldn't want to raise my hand if I were. I'd be in big trouble. No, you invited all people that are outstanding in faith and success, and it's a very noble group. But it's because of the patriotism and goodwill of citizens like you that America remains strong and faithful and free. And together we're going to continue the fight for Judeo-Christian values of our founding fathers. We'll grow our economy. We'll defend our sovereignty. We'll protect our children. When you look at the job we did, I was just thinking because President Putin said it to me and other leaders said it to me. When they looked at those B-2s go in, and think of it, they flew for 37 hours straight. We had 52 tankers, the gasoline tankers, and they rode along with them at different aspects, and they refueled. And not a screw was broken, not a mark was on those planes. Every engine was perfect. When they landed, they were just as good as when they took off. Think of that. 37 hours and about 40 minutes through a very rough territory. And those machines worked incredibly well and literally not a problem. And when I honored the flyers, we did it last week, I also honored the mechanics, the people that took care of those machines. And I said it's equally important. And you compare that, same country, you compare that with what happened with Jimmy Carter. It was a sad situation. The helicopters were coming down and they were aggression and the men were all over the place trying to get the hell out of there. And it turned out to be a hostage situation and horrible thing. And probably it was one of the things that cost them the election, certainly. But when you think of that and you see this was, in terms of perfection, they think it was a perfect military. We sent the planes to Guam. Everybody thought we were flying to Guam. And they said, oh, they're going to Guam. Well, Guam's out of the way. And at the same time, we had some others going a different direction. I watched horrible CNN. You know, you have to watch sometimes your opposition, and they are opposition. And I saw that they had basically the plans of when we're going in, when we would be entering Iranian oil airspace. And I said, you know, that's weird. And I called the general, Raisin Kane. He's fantastic. I said, General, and Pete Hegseth, I said, I'm watching newscasts. You're taking off tomorrow and what time we're going to be entering the very dangerous airspace, the worst air space anywhere there is, anywhere that in the world. I said, what do you think? Sir, we'll be fine. We blow them away, we'll be fine. Because, you know, they went those B-2s with 7, and they were surrounded by a lot of great planes. F was the most beautiful plane ever built. The fighter jet, F-35s, a lot of different planes going with them. I said, but wouldn't a surprise be better? Yeah, it would be better. I said, well, then let me cancel it, and let's make it at a different time. So the day before, you know, I canceled it. I said, I'm canceling it. We'll do it sometime within the next 2, maybe 3 weeks, but I'm canceling it. And then I had a meeting and I said, I have an idea, because I got slightly big coverage, to put it mildly. So everyone knew it was being canceled. I said, the exact same time we were supposed to leave, the following day. And we took off, and that's when the planes went out to Guam and this and that, and we took off. And that was the only time. And they said it. That was the only time they knew we wouldn't be coming in. Was the exact same time that I came. I said, let's do something. And they flew in, and they were stealth, incredible planes. They were stealth. And they hit every bomb, hit their mark. Every single bomb hit the mark. It was unbelievable how they did it. And then they said, skedaddle. Skedaddle means get the hell out of there. They had to get out of that airspace. But it was an amazing thing, and I think it was so great for our country in so many different ways. You know, you see so many incompetent people, like the way we left Afghanistan with Milley and all these incompetent, stupid people. And Biden, I mean, it was him. Leave everything behind. We'll leave jets behind. I said to Milley, I said, so you mean to tell me, because I was going to leave. We would have left earlier than them, but we were going to leave with dignity and I said to Miller, you mean you want to leave a jet fighter behind? Sure, it's cheaper if we do that. I said, wait a minute, give me a tank of gas and I'll fly it to Pakistan, or I'll fly it to someplace, or I'll fly it back home. Why is it cheaper? Oh, it's just cheaper. That's when I realized the guy was grossly incompetent, okay? He's telling me it's cheaper to leave a plane than it is that the planes cost $150 million apiece. Let's leave it, sir. It's just great. And they did. They left all, I was taking everything, but they left it behind. But when you look at what happened and compare that to what we have now, we have a real great machine. I rebuilt the military in my first term, and we left some of it to Afghanistan and the Taliban, and they have their parades. I hate those parades. Every year they have a parade wheeling down our equipment on some very unattractive street. That's, their Fifth Avenue. They show our equipment going down. It's getting older and older, but I hate to see it. But we're going to be working together to protect our children, and with the grace of God and the blessing of Providence, we will lead our country to heights that it's never seen before. I think we're going to be more successful in many ways, but I think we're going to be more successful than we've ever been. And I do think this, if we didn't catch it, the country was finished. I think we were run by incompetent people. We were run by an auto pen that nobody knows who used it. I think it's one of the biggest scandals in the history of our country. We were run by an auto pen. Nobody has any idea who used it, including Biden. He doesn't know. Saw that interview yesterday. He knew nothing. So it's a very terrible. We're against an evil group of people, and they're very smart. Very smart. He's not, but they are. They took over the Oval Office. They actually took over the Oval Office. We can never let a thing like that happen again. So, Paul, I want to thank you very much, and I want to thank Jenny, and most importantly, I want to thank the people in this room. You really are incredible people, an inspiration to our country. And I know you don't know that. You don't think it because you're too busy working. But you are. You're a great inspiration to young people that want to be just like you when they grow up. And thank you very much for being here. And it's a great honor. And, Paul, I think you're going to say a prayer. I'll stay with you while you say your prayer, okay? Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. You guys may be seated for just a moment. And he is our greatest champion of faith of any president that the United States of America has ever had. We are deeply grateful for that. We are very honored that you are all here with us at the White House, and where faith is not sidelined, but has a seat at the table. And as we gather today as leaders of industry, of vision, of faith, I believe that today is going to be very enlightened. And I'm so overwhelmed. We're getting ready to worship and pray, and to just think that prayer, worship, and doing good works is welcome back into President Trump is a historic and a bold move established the White House Faith Office to recognize some simple truths: that America is strongest when faith is engaged and not silenced, when believers are activated and they are not isolated. This administration understands that people who are of faith, who are entrusted with wealth and influence as you are essential to building a stronger, freer, and a more compassionate nation. You're more than just CEOs and business leaders and entrepreneurs. You're stewards on divine assignment, builders of legacy, and vessels of impact. You've been called by God to his kingdom for such a time as this. And together we are witnessing something absolutely remarkable. More has been accomplished by this administration in the past 5 months than in the last several decades. And that is due to the leadership of President Trump, his administration, and the great team he has assembled. America's spiritual and moral foundations have been restored, and it's only the beginning. Today's not just a luncheon. It is a moment of divine alignment, a commissioning. And we believe that God is raising up business leaders who don't separate faith from enterprise, but who see their platforms and their pulpits as their businesses and instruments for eternal impact. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come before you with great reverence and expectation. Your word declares in Isaiah chapter 43, verse 19, "Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs forth. Do you not perceive it?" Lord, we do perceive it. We see the stirring of your hands, reviving hearts, reforming systems, raising up leaders at this very hour. We thank you for our great president, President Trump, for his life, his courage, his clarity, and unwavering defense of faith and freedom. May your wisdom guide him and your protection always surround him according to your word that does not return void. In Psalm 89:21, that you say, "My hand will sustain him, and surely my arm will strengthen him." We bless every person in this room, those you've entrusted this wealth, strategy, and vision to, according to 1 Timothy 6, that you tell us, "Do not put our hope in riches, but be rich in good works, generous and ready to share." So they are your Josephs in Egypt, the wise stewards in famine. They are your Daniels in Babylon, the uncompromising voice, and your Lydia in Philippi, the ones who expanded the kingdom. Let this be more than a meeting. Let it be a movement where we come together and converge to bless communities, care for others, and reach nations, empowered by your purpose and your grace. Unite us with the common cause to use our time and talent. For thy kingdom come, thy will be done in the earth as it is in heaven. In the mighty matchless name of Jesus, we pray these things and come in agreement. Bless this food and bless everyone. And everybody said, amen. And by the way, it is Secretary Howard Lutnick's birthday, so I'll wish him a very happy birthday. We are so grateful for your time, President, and my husband John's going to worship. At any time that you have to go, we know that you have spent more than enough time, and you are running the country exceptionally for us, and we are all so grateful. So he will stay as long as possible, but will you let President know how much we love and appreciate him? I'm going to ask you to remain standing.
President Trump meeting with faith leaders at the Faith Office luncheon today, led by Pastor Paula White. And happy birthday, as she mentioned, to Secretary Howard Lutnick over at Commerce. And usually when you hear the big, almost belly laugh in the room, although someone who is clearly staying in shape, clear of thought and mind, Howard Lutnick, one of the finest in the American cabinet, it's usually him laughing because he likes to laugh and he loves President Trump's jokes. But some big news breaking today. If you watch the entirety of the stream, President Trump will put secondary tariffs at a 100% rate, 100% across the board for Russia if they do not come to an agreement, peace terms within 50 days, as he mentioned, along with NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte of the beautiful country of the Netherlands, the former Dutch Prime Minister. President Trump's on the phone on a regular basis with Vladimir Putin, the leader of Russia, and frankly, he's tired of the promises made but not kept and this stalemate that keeps going, this terrible war for nearly 3.5 years. So the European allies, NATO, will be purchasing Patriot missiles along with other military equipment from the United States to assist with Ukraine. This is a shift in U.S. foreign policy to a certain extent, and a major announcement once again, secondary tariffs coming at Russia at a 100% rate if they do not come to the table once and for all for peace within this 50-day period. So that took place in the Oval Office this morning, and then that Faith Office meeting, that luncheon today, talking about the end of the Johnson Amendment, dating back to Lyndon Baines Johnson, who had a personal beef with a Houston pastor way back when, and really attempted to silence the American church and free speech as a result. Lyndon Baines Johnson, by far one of the worst presidents we've ever had, and someone who really pushed the progressive far left agenda that had a lasting effect in Washington, D.C. and throughout the country. But thanks be to God for President Trump and for the millimeter miracle, as our friend Pastor Lorenzo Sol puts it, as we reflect 1 year and 1 day ago, we could have lost President Trump. He spoke on that matter today, how God has changed his outlook on things and how God, as he put it, wants him to make America great again, why he's here, along with highlighting so many of the great works and accomplishments that this faith office has been part of over the course of the last 6 months of the successes in this administration. Thanks to our sponsors on the right side of history, All Family Pharmacy, with a new discount code today, RSBN 10. It's 10% off of NAD+, methylene blue, ivermectin, hydrochloroquine, and many, many more, including the mebendazole and over 200 essential medications, antibiotics, emergency medical kits, all for you at home. allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. You can fill your medicine cabinet. You know that storms happen in life. Look what just happened to the Texas Hill Country, that horrible overflowing storm of the Guadalupe River. Over 30 feet of water in roughly 30 minutes. And our thoughts and prayers with the great people there in Texas, and President Trump visiting with First Lady Melania Trump on Friday to survey the damage there with local and state officials. A whole of response to this terrible disaster by public and private entities. But that's the reason why you need to have a medicine cabinet stocked, because of emergencies such as that. Scan the QR code there. Visit allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. President Trump signing that executive order to bring down those costs. And this online pharmacy fighting every day for the American people. Great patriots, doctors, nurses, and healthcare providers at allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. No insurance, no issues, no red tape, and no bureaucracy. Just that code RSBN10 for 10% off now at allfamilypharmacy.com/RSBN. Angelpaste.com, the great company out of Spring, Texas, along the Gulf of America. They know a thing or two about miracle creams. Their original vitamin B infused, non-GMO, no chemical. You've seen me try that here on the network, and it left my skin glowing and refreshed. There's also the all-natural mosquito spray and an immunity-boosting orange option filled with vitamin C. Again, non-GMO, no chemicals, and also a great facial spray, among other products, so you could paint the town red. They are Christian-owned. They hire veterans. Angelpaste.com. Experience that miracle that will help you make your day just a little bit better and brighter with your skin glowing. Angelpaste.com. So lots of coverage today, lots of breaking news over the course of the last few weeks. We hope you're enjoying your summer vacations and some downtime with the family and friends as we enjoy the warm summer months. Get all the America First updates and exclusive offers right here at rsbnetwork.com/newsletter. And with some different policy items announced today and changing, we will always be on the front lines for you, presenting you with every speech, every press conference, unbridled access inside the Beltway, outside the Beltway of your 47th president, 50th vice president, and the 119th Congress that you put into place back on November 5th of last year. Now, please stay tuned with us this afternoon as Mr. Matthew Alvarez covers the Republican Study Committee press conference. 1 year since the Trump assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania. I can't believe it's been 366 days now. I'm sure we all remember where we were on that evening, and we pray for Corey Campetor's family as he really embodied what it means to be a hero, not only in his daily actions and vocation as a fire chief and firefighter. He loved his community, but protecting his wife and young daughters from bullets, and something that should never happen when you are participating in the laboratories of democracy and attending especially something as loving as a Trump rally. So we remember that especially this week. Stick with us and be with us at 3 o'clock Eastern, so roughly 86 minutes from now. It's 1:34 on the East Coast, and it's still a bright, beautiful morning on the West Coast. A beautiful day in Washington, D.C. For all of my colleagues here on the right side of history, I'm Robert McNeely. Have a wonderful day, And God bless you and yours, and stay tuned with us here on the right side of history. We'll see you soon.
Welcome to Right Side Broadcasting Network, your trusted conservative news outlet. At RSBN, we deliver the truth when the mainstream media falls short. Since 2015, we've proudly broadcasted every single one of President Trump's iconic MAGA rallies, bringing you the excitement and energy live before anyone else. By watching RSBN, you get an unfiltered front row view of the action on the ground. We interview the crowds to give a voice to millions of Americans just like you. We show you President Trump's speeches in their entirety, free from interruptions and censorship. We cover the stories that matter to you with the integrity and passion you deserve. Thank you for choosing RSBN as your home for America First News. Together, we stand strong, united, and informed, so join us and be part of the right side of history.
Hey y'all, it's Silk from the Diamond and Silk Chit Chat live show. Look, don't forget to check me out right here on RSBN Network. Be sure to watch the show on Right Side Broadcasting Network, and I want you to support Right Side Broadcasting Network. Yes, it's imperative that you do so, okay? I look to see y'all soon. Bye-bye.
To celebrate our newest launch, Rev 7, I'm bringing you an amazing introductory offer, plus an exclusive overstock sale that you're not going to want to miss. Rev 7 is our premium energy drink that tastes great and gives you energy all day with no jitters and no crashes. That's because there's no sugar and no caffeine. I'm so sure you're going to love Rev 7 that for a limited time you can try our 3-pack absolutely free. Or check out our Percale bed sheets. I can't believe I'm even going to say this. Every color, every style, every size, only $29.88. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 20% on our Rev 7 12-packs or try our introductory 3-pack absolutely free. And our Percale bed sheets, all sizes only $29.88, even the queens and kings. Inventory is extremely limited, so order now.